Be you still. Be you still, trembling heart. Remember the wisdom out of the old days. Him who trembles before the flame and the flood and the winds that blow through the starry ways. Let the starry winds and the flame and the flood cover over and hide, for he has no part with the lonely, majestical multitude.
Welcome to Magic Without Fears, Hermetic podcast. I'm here today with a very exciting and special guest, Frater Eleftheria. I've got some dramatic lighting. We're still a little bit in spooky season, so welcome everybody. Yes. Frater, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we have so much to talk about. Before we went live, we were just... I was telling you I finished your Doreen Virtue video on witches and New Agers that get saved and then become fundamentalist, radical, evangelical, pagan-hating Christians. What is up with the pipeline of witch and pagan to Christian evangelical? I mean, does it make sense? It kind of makes sense, but I also think it's insane. So I'd love to talk about that with you, because that was a good one. And also we're going to talk about Crossing the Abyss, your excellent outline of the traditional watchtowers that you did, and the Black Lodge, because we have so much to talk about, never enough time. And if anyone has questions, please super chat them, or you can just write a question and we might see it. We might get to it at the end. Either way, whatever you want to do, we're here to inform and entertain and to enjoy each other's magical company today. Got a little psychedelic background with the green screen all bunched up because I raced home. So let's have some fun. Yeah. What's up with the witch to fundamentalist Christian pipeline?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting phenomenon. It seems like there's an increasing number of people on social media in particular who are kind of getting saved, and a lot of those are prominent occultists or pagans or witches. And in some cases, it's like, okay, that's where you're at on your path, and you know you can kind of understand the evolution in a way. But some people take that and they just go in a really zealous direction with it, I suppose, in terms of trying to convert or denounce their previous practices. And it's almost like they become more extreme because of that conversion process and that story of, I guess, escaping the devil or something. I don't quite know how to explain it. Some of it could be part of a broader cultural phenomenon. It's an interesting one.
You know, it's interesting. Even when I converted to Christianity as a young adult, I think, I started the process 18, 19, 20. But then when I went to seminary, they were very aware of the fact that converts tend to be the most hardcore and extreme of people within any church. And so they give you, there was like a little leeway given to me sometimes when I was just getting into, actual life in the church, as it were, because they knew that I needed time to chill out, right? It takes time. When you grow up in a faith, where the edges are hard and where they should be softened slightly. But converts don't know that, right? They just go in whole hogged and rah rah. And do you think that's part of at least what's going on? It seems to me that's part of it, but that doesn't explain why they keep going so hardcore into demonizing their former past life and the traditions and other people, right? If all of a sudden my way is the highway and your way is evil. And something else seems to be going on there. Something deeper.
Yeah. Well, I think it can be a combination of disillusionment with their old belief system, perhaps being confronted with their own shadow in some way and getting scared by that and thinking that it's the belief system that is responsible for that. But then, the people with the biggest shadow of all are often the evangelical Christians. So it's kind of making the problem worse by them going through that conversion. But I mean, you can see a similar thing happening with, I certainly know in my case, when I became a Thelemite, there was a lot of reaction to my earlier Catholic upbringing there. And, I used to be quite anti-religious when I was younger, and eventually I grew out of it. I sort of had a more balanced and holistic view of things. But, if you've been really hard into one particular type of belief and then you feel disappointed by that belief, you can sort of swing the other way.
Yeah, almost like there's almost like to validate their choice to become saved, as a Christian, they need to destroy their previous lifestyle. Otherwise, it's like if people who are listening have thoughts on this, shoot them out there. If I see something that it maybe is said, if you say it better than I can say it, yeah, because it's almost like they have to discredit where they come from to be able to move on. In a way, it's like, because if where I came from is okay, then the problem is me. If what I left behind isn't evil, then maybe I need to look inward at what's really going on. But we're not going to do that because Jesus saves. Yay. Right? Like, no responsibility there. The grace walk.
Yeah. And I do think sometimes the problem can be that, more so in New Age type beliefs, the resources aren't always there to go really deep into a form of spiritual practice or, a questioning of things that gets into uncomfortable territory that isn't all love and light. So it's not surprising that it might be more difficult to do shadow work in that kind of spiritual framework. I'm not bagging it. Like, I think there's a lot of cool stuff in New Age practice as well, but a lot of people's experience can be that it doesn't go deep enough as something like a more traditional kind of school might offer.
Yeah, there's some good comments from people listening, saying a lot of compensating going on, showing creds. They think they'll be accepted because they feel insecure about their past. If they don't invalidate their former lifestyle, they believe themselves prone to go back to it. Yes, well, that's actually that's a fact of all speciation, right? It's why Crowley had to speciate his system from the GD. He had to make fundamental changes, because if you were able to do Crowley's system but still fully do the GD and they fit perfectly, then it wouldn't be speciated and it wouldn't survive. So like changing things like the path, flipping the Emperor and the Star card, and doing some other little changes make it backwards incompatible. And that's what speciates it and makes it a viable thing for the future. You have to speciate, or you get it reabsorbed back into where you came from. This is across all things, it seems. So yeah, but that doesn't explain then them going on crusades to destroy people of their former faith or of any other faith. That just seems to be a trait of radical fundamentalism in any religion. I mean, we got that here with most religions. There's the radical wings. We got this like terrorist group of Sikhs, who I always thought were like the most peaceful people. They're called Khalistani, and like they're like threatening to kill the prime minister, like posting, going outside his house and doing dolls that are hanged with guns to their heads when he's not home. Like crazy big stuff. Yeah, right. The peaceful Sikhs who give free food every day to everyone. Like, I don't know, any religion can go extreme and radical and just become no bueno. So,
yeah, and I mean, Sikhism is sort of a warrior religion as well. You know, they carry the sabers and things like that.
Yeah, apparently one of the big revolutions was when there was a debate that led to bloodshed over whether, so because it's a belief that everyone's equal, but then it was like, well, then we should all sit on the floor, and some were like, no, we should sit in chairs, and there was violence over that, whether everyone should sit on the floor or everyone should sit in chairs, because you can't have some people doing one of each, because then that's implying that, you know, but it's like, what if they have a bad back, you know? Yeah, no, that Sikhism is it was a surprising one to see that there's a radical wing of, but I'm not that well informed on it. So of course I'm, you know, not surprised I wasn't aware. But yeah, we have that of all these paths.
Yeah, and Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated by a radical Hindu. I mean, you know,
right. That's right.
Well, if you were going to say that any form of religious fundamentalism wasn't going to be violent, you know, Hinduism would be one of the top picks, right? But, you know, with ahimsa and all that, but it can happen to any religion, it seems.
Yeah. Here we go. Here's someone's good thoughts. Then we'll move on to some more interesting topics. Gannicus says, it doesn't surprise me that former occultists go for evangelicalism. It is highly charismatic and has magic adjacent practices. Yes, it does. I mean, they're not really magic adjacent. You could say they're magic practices. The downside is the judgmental nature. Yeah, that is a downside with people in general. No one wants to hang out with judgmental douchebags ever.
Touché.
Right? Like,
Touché.
We just don't. We're just not into it. Yeah, glossolalia, speaking in tongues. Oh, the list of Christian, like we have published full books on manuscript after manuscript of Christian magic going back into the beginning. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but you did a couple really interesting videos recently. The Enochian tablets one was great. I totally encourage everyone to go watch that, because you don't approach it the direction most people approach it. And it's a short video, but you really covered a lot of the basics of the Watchtower. I love how you didn't approach it going back in time, starting sort of with Crowley, then to the Golden Dawn, then to D. That's how a lot of times it's done. Right, you know, this is what most people do, and it came from the Golden Dawn, but then it was totally different. You started with the D, of course, no surprise, you know, that an Enochiacon presenter would sort of know the new way of thinking about this, starting with the old, moving on to the new, so that we understand how the new came about. Gives us much deeper knowledge. And yeah, you go over the tablets and this, you know, how the kings work. I actually had a thought. I made a note. I made some questions for you. But, you know, that's one thing about the kings, right? Traditionally, they're two names of 7. The Golden Dawn said we're going to turn it into a big king of the earth and the air and the water and the fire by turning it into a name of 8, which to me still rubs me kind of the wrong way. I worked with those kings, and it's the most powerful magic I've ever done. But the 8 in a system of 7s is odd.
It is odd.
Despite being even.
Yeah, I mean, it's, one thing about the symmetry of the Enochian system is that it's 7 everything, 7 by 7 by 7 by 7, you know, and the number 4 in there as well. But it wouldn't be the only time where the symmetry of the 7 is broken by 8 in Enochian magic, because there's also, there's the 7 names of the circumference on the Sigillum Dei Emet, and then there's the 8th hidden name of a Borimon as well, which is another example where that happens within the system. So maybe it's not without precedent. I don't know.
It's not hard to it's not hard to see the thinking behind it. It's just, curious to me that they would think they should make a name of 8. But I guess if it's representing something that should stand out, then that sort of makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, and you were oblique at the end when outlining the practice of the cacodemons, of course, and didn't give all the instructions, which I thought was I sort of want to say cute, but I mean wise. It was wise. People don't need to be messing around with that stuff, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not gonna help you very much in life, in my experience.
Yeah. And you talked about the puff of smoke. Yeah, so a lot of people know that the North Tablet, the sigil on it, extrapolated by the Golden Dawn, is actually an extrapolation of a placeholder, because the true symbol wasn't actually technically revealed, it seems. I scryed it once, and I'll tell you after what I saw, because it's very appropriate, interesting, but it shocked me. I can't actually say it right now. Yeah. I realized that I should have brought it up, but remind me to tell you afterwards. You can all guess what I saw. It would get us demonetized.
Right.
So, but it's appropriate to the Zealot Raid and to the Earth Tablet. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that these days. Things are too crazy. Though YouTube did send out a video notification to creators saying that we can say like the actual word for grape or PDF file and stuff in context when it's appropriate, and people don't need to say that anymore. But some of the other ones, they're like getting stricter again. It's hard to keep up. I know you've had some trouble with the great Google and YouTube realities. But you've been doing outstanding. It's been great to see your channel grow. When you came along, I jumped into your channel right away, and I was so nervous you might get like hit with some heavy shadow banning like me and some others did early on, probably because we made too many jokes about sensitive subjects and we're just trying to goof around, right? That's probably what it is. Could be mob flagging. That's what I think it is. But yeah, but you managed to blow up, which is just such a relief to the rest of other magical people who are trying to, get their raise awareness out there. So well done. Yeah. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting that you've done that, managed to hit the algorithm in a good way. It's just great, especially given that you have an actual adept level knowledge of these things, right? That was one of the funnest things when I first was discovering you, was when you talk about a new heavy subject. I'm like, okay, does this guy really know his stuff? And sure enough, you did, though. You really did. And I was like, always. Then you did Enochian. I'm like, okay, he can't also be good at Enochian as well. But no, you were as well-rounded as I could have only hoped. So that's when I first reached out to you, for those who might be curious. And I said, hey, you're a Thelemite in Australia. Do you know my old buddy, the great Canadian rock singer, Jeff Martin from the Tea Party? And what did you say? Yes, I was in his lodge, or something like that. I'd love to hear more now that we're actually face to face, because that was just over the old Instagram.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm glad that my content has hit the right level of knowledge. That's, I'm glad that's happened, because I can sometimes be my own worst critic, and it's quite affirming to hear someone like yourself say that. So what did you want to know more about in particular?
Yeah, so you guys were in the same lodge?
Yeah, we were for a time. We didn't spend that much time together, but
you mentioned there was a split in the lodge, sort of, and you were by happenstance with friends with some people who didn't get. There was a human stuff, but you never you knew him but didn't become personal friends, right?
Well, I mean, we were friends, and we did have that friendship with each other, but it wasn't like a close friendship. It wasn't like hanging out every weekend to have a beer kind of thing. It's like the person who sort of comes in and out of your life at different points. Yeah, but I mean, I'd rather not go into the politics of that period.
Oh no, I'm not interested in that at all.
It's just typical OTO crap.
I'm going to my second OTO and Mass tomorrow with my friends, it seems. So they wrote me and they've asked me to come. I'm like, yeah, I've only been once before with Lon years ago. Happy to go and hang out, and I'm free to, so I can take the time off to do it. So that'll be fun. It's been I went in 2018 with Chris Bennett and Lon Milo Duquette for the anniversary of the Book of the Law, and yeah, it was nice. It's really interesting to always see like lines I know so well from Golden Dawn rituals set in a different place and time, in a different context slightly. It's very interesting because you just never hear those lines said anywhere else ever, except with OTO and AA. Yeah. Yeah. So no, I'm curious. Like, did you enjoy rock stars like who reach that level of fame become like they get a shield, right? They get cautious with people and they tend to keep a distance. I don't know if that was a factor, but yeah, how was it hanging out with one of the greatest Canadian musicians in history? Well, I know his music's not your taste, but that's okay.
Well, it depends what day it is, but yeah, I mean, it was good. It's like hanging out with Captain Jack Sparrow. It's great.
Oh, he would love that. He would love that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would.
Well, the captain is what he's called. That's what his friends call him, or Martin is what people call him, but the captain is his other nom de plume. The captain of the ship. Yep, the captain of a 3-person band. Anyway, I look forward to. He's playing, I think, this weekend in Vancouver. Their tea party back in Vancouver. I believe this weekend. Maybe it's next weekend. It's a long month. So yeah, well, that's interesting, and yeah, so cool that there's that crossover, and yeah, when he brought his wife back to town, I got to meet her.
Yeah, cool.
She was she. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying we both have that 1 degree of separation from the captain, it seems.
It's pretty adorable, pretty awesome. Small world. Yeah, I'm so happy that he married that lovely bride of his. I won't say her name, but yeah, because I've known a few of his past relationships and stuff, and he's been through it. He's been through it, eh? So it's cool that he's all happy and set up in Australia, and yeah, everything's as it should be. Yeah, so that's how we met. That's how you and I first got in touch, and everyone knows now. And maybe it's interesting, maybe it's not, but I think it's a groovy story. And then you did a Nokia Con and did a great presentation for us last year, which people are still enjoying.
Oh, that's great.
I'd love to. Yeah. It was great to have you. I'm glad your wife reached out to apply for you.
She tends to be the more sociable one out of us two.
Yeah, you seem. Are you always a more of a reserved kind of person, a more shy and quiet kind of person, or do you have a more energy? Do you have a party version of Frater Eleftheria?
Well, it's not so much shyness, but I am a very reserved person, and
yeah, I meant reserved, not shy.
Yeah, not naturally very sociable. Sometimes, sometimes that's the way that it is. You have the kind of the person who's a bit more introverted, and but yeah, there probably is a party version of me. I mean, back in the day, I used to go out
how else to say it
and stuff like that. So it's got to be buried deep down in there somewhere, and hopefully hasn't been destroyed by the crossing of the abyss completely.
Yeah, I watched that video, and what struck me was, I mean, it was beautiful, if not even more beautiful, in my opinion, than sort of some of Crowley's vision and the voice type stuff. It really had the power of authentic beauty, I think. And it was amazing that you shared all of that, which a shy person wouldn't do. So reserved is the word, definitely, and not shy for you, for sure. But yeah, what a beautiful thing to share with the world. Will you say that again?
I said keeping silent taken to a whole new level.
Exactly.
Anyway.
No, exactly.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh no, it's so the crossing of the abyss. I noticed some. It's an interesting thing to talk about, but that's one of the wonderful reasons I think your channel is doing so well. Why you're reaching so many people is because you are being very open. You're being more open than I've even ever been, and I get criticized all the time for having been too open on the podcast. And you put me to shame. Like, you're sharing what might seem like the holiest of holy of your experiences. So thank you for that, because it's amazing to get to see that kind of insight. I noticed a comment under that video about because you're talking about dealing with your ego, working with your ego, purifying, moving past it, and someone mentioned a sort of snarky comment about your ego, because I assume because you made the video at all. And that was interesting, I thought, because that's an interesting question, right? Like, is it ego to share about your journey beyond ego?
I'm really glad that you brought that up, actually.
Oh yeah, yay!
Yeah, because
Thank God.
this is no. I'm happy that you brought it up, because this is one of my pet peeves about the Western occult world. Is like, so we have this path of initiation that is supposed to be for the spiritual liberation of the human race, and you do the work, you do the tasks, you do all the initiations, and you elevate yourself, and you have to actually do the work to do that. But then you've got people saying, like, oh, you can't ever talk about knowledge and conversation with a holy guardian angel. Like, so then what's the point of doing it? So you're just doing it for yourself? Like, how are other people supposed to learn from your example, or if you fail, learn from your mistakes? I think that I think it's absolutely important for people to actually do their best in the system and then share their results. And I don't think that necessarily has an ego driven motive behind it. And I think the people that jump to that conclusion are saying more about themselves than they are about other people. Sorry, brother, you're on mute.
Yeah, I got that. Sorry. It always makes me think of the Moses and Aaron story. How they sort of divided up roles, and someone has to there's always sacrifice that needs to be made. And one of the things that we know as a defining feature, I don't know the OTO and AA system like my friend who was just hanging out with does, who also thinks that we're very lucky to have you online as a shining example of an AA adept. He's a high-ranking OTO guy here in Canada, and he also he shares my opinion of you, which is nice to hear from your own tradition. He's like, yeah. There's people out there online, and we're very lucky to have a bunch of the ones we have, right? It could be much worse. We could have a very different quality of person in many cases. So the role of the ego. What was that? Where's the thing? Train of thought. Yeah, it's slightly, we see it treat it sort of slightly differently in our two traditions, but there's still a similar difference in understanding of the ego compared to, say, a lot of New Age or Eastern philosophies and practices. Like Rudolf Steiner, for example, is the example I always like to point to. For Rudolf Steiner, the higher self is the I. And what's I in Latin?
Ego.
Yeah. So for Steiner, that's the higher self, and the lower self is the me, which is interesting. That throws a wrench in the whole New Age language of, destroying your ego and your egotistical, or egotistical is a different word, but yeah, just the ego as a bad word. in general. Yeah, how do we think about that differently? And is it egotistical to be talking about like that? That's such an absurdism that it would be somehow egotistical to talk about transcending and working with your ego, purifying it, making it the seat of the soul, and that sort of thing. But people get uncomfortable about that stuff, which is why I think people make snarky comments. And sometimes, of course, they're trolling in good humor or bad, and that's it. I noticed there is a couple really interesting comments that people made that are actually worth sort of just throwing up there. Actually, it's a different topic. So they want to know what our favorite occultist is or something. We'll get to that. Let's stay on the abyss and crossing the abyss. And
there's somebody there who's commented about Gurdjieff being the best to do ego work. I wholeheartedly agree with that statement.
Why is that?
Well, Gurdjieff and some of the people in his Fourth Way school, they really differentiated themselves from other Western occultists by focusing on what they call the work on oneself, which is all about dissolving egos, plural, like identifying ego trips, basically, that we have as like separate personalities that need to be dissolved or resolved into some positive, authentic sense. And the people in the Western tradition that are really working on the ego that I've observed have drawn a lot on Gurdjieff's work in particular. So, yeah, good recommendation.
Mm-hmm. So what, for those who haven't watched your video on crossing the abyss, is going on? Since you don't mind talking about it, clearly, what is going on with the ego in the crossing of the abyss experience and practice? Because for you, there's a whole vow that you take in your tradition. We don't have that vow, but you guys have a vow, which I'm kind of jealous of. I mean, we should get a Golden Dawn version of that vow. Maybe you can help me write it.
Yeah. I mean, you could write it. I'm sure I can help if you want. You could steal ours even. But yeah, what's going on with the ego? It's a good question. So, and the second half of that account is going to drop in just over 12 hours.
Great.
Basically,
there's more.
Yeah. So there's more explanation there, and yeah, I mean the second half isn't as nice as the first one. But anyway, the ego.
Is that because there's more alligators?
Well,
or something worse.
Something worse.
Oh no.
But
we won't spoil it.
If you've got mental health problems, please don't watch it. Yeah. Anyway, so the ego. So the crossing of the abyss, the experience itself, the ego is completely destroyed. But then it's not like you get to the other side and you're like a brainwashed person from a cult and you're just like a blank slate and you have no personality and that sort of thing. The personality gets reconstituted. But I think perhaps the dross has been burnt away, or at least a lot of it. And sometimes I think what happens is the fundamental experience of the abyss is the complete deconstruction of that sense of the individual personality, which of course the ego is attached to. Some people you can argue, I think, quite correctly that the ego is not quite the same as the personality when we're talking about the thing that you need to get rid of in the inner work. But you do lose that sense of self. You do have a kind of loss of self and an ego death in the sense that modern psychology would describe it. And that kind of changes your perspective on things. And when you do come back, there's maybe things that you think that are a bit different to how you were before, or at least seeing things in a context that was different to before. And I think that just because you've crossed the abyss doesn't mean you get to say, that's it, done and dusted. Like, I have no ego. I'm perfect. I think that's not true. I think you just see behind the curtain, and then certain things get dissolved. But so long as we come back to a state where we are, where we experience things as an individual, there's always going to be the potential for the ego to re-emerge. And so long as we're capable of seeing things in an illusion, like mistaking falsehood for truth, and then forming an impression on that, there's still the potential for the ego to come back. So it doesn't change the fact that we need to keep working all the time. But yeah, I do think that the ego is different to the personality. I think that everybody has a personality, and that's just like a natural part of the human condition. And the thing that we need to overcome with the inner work, with the alchemy, if you like, is those parts of us where we become really attached to something false, that is of the world, that is based in some kind of what the Christians would call vices, rather than relying on our inner divinity for our sense of identity. And the process of discovering that that's what we really are begins with the knowledge and conversation, I think. But then we've got the knowledge of that, and we've still got our old self based on more egoic forms of identification intact. And then the work then becomes to minimize the lead and refine our personality more and more into the gold of the angel, I think. So that was a very long digression, but I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you mentioned repetition or like it's an unfinished task, and I think that's a key part. Definitely, yeah, in the Golden Dawn, especially the working with tech with Zax, is a constant working, right? And crossing the abyss is done repetitively, regularly by Golden Dawn adepts who do that working, who work with Zax, so a lot, and most of us do, I think. But we don't treat it as I think the same kind of initiation as it's treated in your tradition, which is cool. It's something, I think it's a cool feature of that tradition that makes such a big deal out of it, of this task. A task which actually leads to, whether you pass or fail it, people sometimes even considering you to be fallen into the Black Lodge or something like that. So it's a task, an initiation with some real risk, for the person doing it, but also just optically, right? If you say you've done that and you act a certain way, people are gonna maybe say, yeah, that's a black brother. I've heard many people say that to me. I've heard Golden Dawn people say it to me. I'm like, yeah, we don't really have that thing in our tradition. They're like, well, I just think he's a dick. It's like, oh, well, that's a different thing then. you don't like, so you had a fight, okay. But the personality, yeah, a lot of people in the New Age movement see it as something that needs to be shed or to die for you to gain access to your higher self. Whereas in the Golden Dawn tradition, it's more something that needs to be purified. And I think that goes back to the core Hermetica literature, where it talks about the soul, and the soul is contaminated, however, with and the Christians the Christian dogma wouldn't like this actually, but the soul is weighed down by the dirt and moisture of this world, and has to be liberated with heat and fire, which is adoration and reverence to the divine and harmony and beauty, right? And by that way we purify the soul so that it can then rise up and unite with our holy daimon upon death, and we become like a star god. And that's the Hermetica. But in life, as initiates, what's our task? I like what Goethe says about the personality being the greatest gift of the child of earth, because I think it definitely makes a statement to not cast aside what your personality is, but to refine it, as opposed to try and negate, neglect, or destroy it. because we've all seen the New Agers who feel like they've destroyed their personality, or who really have rubbed it down to the point in which it's like this homogenous, happy person with the guru eyes. You know, we've all seen
Yeah.
that. Right.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, you do that too well. That's unsettling.
I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to do it in the camera while still seeing if I'm doing it in the screen. I can't really. So yeah. I've met a lot of those people. I've had, there's people like that. I've known a lot of those people too much. Yeah, it's enough to make you want to just throw it all away sometimes, those people, and just, play video games or become some other kind of more normal person, because they can really ruin it for one bad apple,
Yeah. And it's another trap is, and I think this is probably where the Black Brother thing really comes into it. But like another trap you can fall into is if you say you've crossed the abyss or you've destroyed the ego, and you interpret that as meaning, well, my work is finished and everything that I do from this point on is perfect and in perfect alignment with the will of God, then inevitably when the shadow aspects come back again, because you don't think you need to work on them anymore, you have to save face, you have to try and justify that as like, oh, that was just that person's karma and I was teaching them a karmic lesson. Or, oh, in my case, I'm special, so it doesn't matter if I act like a douchebag after I've crossed the abyss because I have this special mission as, the prophet of the new aeon or whatever it is. And you fall into that trap, and then you start to reinforce negative behavior instead of actually continuing to work on it. And the ego becomes God.
Right. The people who clearly, whether it's failing at crossing the abyss or whatever process or a ceremony or a stage of alchemy you want to call it, people who go through a major experience like that where you're meant to become more united with your divine self, the failure is then coming back and seeing yourself as God, right? As conflating your own higher soul with the divine, and then everyone else is wrong and should die. It's like, I'm right, everyone else is wrong. We all know people like that. Here's an interesting comment. So thanks for everyone being here again. Allison ZT says, true, but while living in this world, we cannot be completely rid of ego. So I would say that the last thing you want to do is get rid of any ego. Like, I don't understand why people want to get rid of their ego. It's what makes us interesting. It's what gives us personalities. And or if you want to take the Latin point of view, it's the I of the higher self, which Steiner called it, right? But of course, there's, I think, often an unfortunate conflation of the term ego with egotistic or with egoism. But ego doesn't mean egoism or egotism. Ego, there's nothing about the word ego or personality that implies you should in any way be shut off from God or your holy daimon, right? That's something people are doing on their own in their head. It's not necessary.
Yeah. And I think it gets a bit challenging talking about this in the Western tradition, because we have this word ego, which, as you've pointed out, simply means I, as in like the personality. But then colloquially, ego gets spoken about in terms of like the negative or distorted manifestations of that personality. And then when we talk about the Eastern mystics and what their Eastern, broad brush for so many diverse practices, but like the Buddhist or the Hindu practices, the word that they use when we translate those texts into English is the ego is the thing that needs to be dissolved, and that might have a different meaning to what was actually intended by those texts, or indeed what is intended by the meaning of the word in the West. So it starts to get very messy, and defined terms aren't very defined very well, and that is where some of the confusion can arise. But I think that one thing that I talk about, spoiler alert, in the second video that's dropping soon, is how people So to get beyond the abyss, you have to look beyond duality, right? And so like people interpret that non-duality or that non-dualism as meaning like I have to see the oneness of all things, and I can't see things dualistically. I'm not allowed to see things as a duality. And I think what the true error in dualistic thinking is not seeing the world that way, because the Taoists would say, yeah, that is the way that the universe is. It's not good or bad. It just is what it is. But then the error comes when you become polarized by that dualism, and you go to one or the other side, and you say this is all that's real, and everything else is evil, and that's the thing that you need to sort of see beyond, I suppose.
Yeah. Purification of the ego versus transcendence of the ego. I grew up in yoga, right, in TM and Maharishi community, and it was about transcending the ego. And that's why I think I found my path in the West with the idea of transforming it, right? So, yeah, making it more a fitting receptacle for your true will, as you Thelemites love to say, which, it's one of Crowley's best teachings, in my opinion, his thoughts on that. Like, once you're doing your true will, you got the force of the universe behind you. I would caveat that in modern day, because a lot of people take that as meaning like, do your passion. It's like, you should do your passion, but you should also do what you're good at. Because, it's easy to think your true will would be your passion, but maybe your true will is also maybe even a bit more the thing that you're best at. Possibly worth considering anyway. Someone asked a detailed question. There's a few other questions along this line, so I want to address them because I like Allison, who said personality is the mask that the ego wears. Yeats really went into that with his theory, his vision theory. And so this is the question from Eddie. Could the abyss be what some refer to as the void? Let me give my quick hot take on that. I would interpret the abyss and the idea of a void is different. The void I would see more as in, right? There's en so forth, there's Keter, then en so forth, the limitless light, or en sof, then the limitless en sof, and then there's en, nothingness. Or as many Kabbalists like to remind us, no thing. Justin Sledge was pointing that out on his video the other day. It's like, yeah, no thing. And that I would take, wouldn't that sound more like void? That sounds to me more like void. Because the abyss of Da'at is not a void. In fact, it's full of too much stuff, perhaps. You entered an old library crossing in one of your crossings, and full of knowledge. And Karanzam, or Karanzan, is known for, yap, 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 yap. Doesn't sound like a void to me at all. So I would say the abyss is not the void.
Well, there's definitely a difference between the three veils of negative existence that you described in Kabbalah and the abyss on the tree of life. But I do think that there's possibly some similarities to explore there. When we're, like, for example, when in the Western collective unconscious, we're confronted with the terror of our own insignificance in the face of everything else. Why does that manifest to us in the form of an abyss?
Mm-hmm.
And and is part of the spiritual journey to actually recognize that an abyss is not a bad thing, that the abyss could be the illuminated void, and it could be, and that the loss of self might actually not be a disaster, but be the path to enlightenment. So there may be some, I don't know, in my opinion, there may be some connections that you could draw there. Yeah.
As soon as you said that, I had an epiphany, actually. I was like, maybe the abyss of Da'at, right? That jump from created reality, created nature, incarnation, across into the uncreated, pre-created, pre-semiotic. That's a fun one. Pre-semiotic higher realms of nascence. Perhaps dot there is really the lower reflection of the ain. So the ain as we can experience it, the only way we can ever experience, because you can't experience no thing, but the closest you can get to it perhaps is the invisible sphere of dot. It's just a thought that occurred to me while you were saying that.
Yeah, and that fits perfectly with Kabbalah, because the ain is all folded up inside Keter, right? And that's one of the Sephiroth that's reflected down as dot. So yeah.
No, that's interesting. What do you think about this? Gannicus says maybe it's about understanding the difference between your ego and the fact that your true nature is divine and connected to all, being able to see the difference. I think that's a very hermetic view, yeah, the soul is slightly dirtied with whether sin or the moisture or dust of being incarnated, of being in creation, because only the monad in that view is completely good and completely pure. So everything in creation's slightly impure. That's the deal, right? In the Hermetica. And so, yeah, we purify the unclean daimones out of ourselves. You can see where Scientology got this idea with their thetans. Yeah, they didn't come up with anything new. They just put on a paint job and locked a bunch of people away in little villas so they couldn't, defame them. But enough about Scientology. We don't need to talk about them. But yeah, you purify yourself of these unclean. Yeah, right. That's all right. That would probably help my channel grow. I'd get on all the talk shows. Yeah, so you purify yourself out of these things, of these daimones, of these impure spirits, and that helps elevate your soul, initiates you in the way of Hermes, so that when you die, your soul rises up and rejoins with your daimon, your higher soul, and then you get to live eternally as something like a god, like an angel. That's the Hermetica. It's again, I think it's worth coming back to that, because both our traditions share that as a common spiritual source. So that's always a useful bridge I've found, increasingly with the great work done by people like Hanegraaff and Litwa and many others, right? In resuscitating the sort of spiritual core of those texts for us to actually make sense of them and discover that our traditions may have turned out to be far more hermetic than we thought. Once you remove all that, silly astrology from the Hermetica that was added in by some illiterate astrologer years later, and then got interpolated into the text, causing all kinds of confusion. So that's interesting. Yeah. Someone asks, how does the Klipot relate to the abyss? Great question. And we have the perfect guest for it, Frater Eleftheria. Take it away, sir. I'm just going to leave that on the screen.
Yeah, so that's interesting. If you want to look at the OTO kind of thelemic tradition and how they would answer that question, you've got all of the work of Kenneth Grant, which and his seminal text, The Night Side of Eden, which is all about, it's about the paths that connect the Klipot, but you've got the negative side of the tree of life, and the way that you enter into that through the mauve zone is via the abyss. And so there's this link between the abyss and the Klipot. But really, another way that it can be related is that, at least in one of the traditions I've explored, which is the kind of modern Gnostic schools started by Samael Aun-Weor in Latin America, the Klipot are treated as the abysses of the planets. So at a certain point in that initiatory path, you have to enter into, it's like you're moving up the negative tree. You enter into the abyss of each planet, which is its Klipot, and then you with the intention not of doing some kind of left-hand path type of work, but in this instance, sort of liberating the divine sparks that are trapped there and transforming it into the more positive aspects of that sephira. So, again, the sort of process of transmutation that goes on there. And, you can see that as archetypal forces in the human consciousness. So, yeah, there have been some opinions where the Klippold have been related to the abyss in that way.
Does the AA or any of your aspects of your tradition, plus I know you've done other traditions as well, so ever consider Karanzam to be the Klippa of Da'at?
Not that I've heard of anywhere
Yeah.
in stuff that I've read.
I could see that being done by someone, like just pencil it in there under Thaumiel. It's an interesting idea, right? Like, yeah, because Da'at is not a sephira like other sephiras, and it's yeah. Someone has a thought here that's interesting. Perhaps the void is an absence and abyss is a destination. I don't know. Is the void, any void, I think, is by definition an absence for sure, and an abyss means a gap between manifestation and the unmanifest, the creation and the creative forces of nature or God. But is the abyss a destination? I mean, it's kind of a destination in the grade Babe of the Abyss. You go there and sort of hang out there in that grade for a while. In the Golden Dawn, that grade is actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I actually studied those very much higher grades, because Stella Matutina does have the grades all the way up to Absissimus, and special temples for it behind the vault. So the Babe of the Abyss is actually a combination grade of Hakma and Bina, which is interesting, I think. No, I think it might be Abyss, then Hakma and Bina, then Kether for those three higher supernal grades. Yeah, I don't know, because they're not traditional Golden Dawn. They were written by Felkin and others in the Stella Matutina, along with new versions of the 6.5 and 7.4, of course, which even Yates and Westcott went through because they were so good. And the Stella Matutina, of course, was the slightly more magical branch of the GD, when the GD, transformed into multiple traditions, multiple offshoots. The Stella Matutina is where all the really magical people went. So a lot of the changes in it that you see in Regardi's Golden Dawn, a lot of those, many of us would consider improvements. Like most Golden Dawn people consider the Stella Matutina improvements on the original stuff. There's not many changes, but there are changes. Like the meditations, the daily rhythms, all of those are Stella Matutina. They didn't exist in the original GD. We just had the LRP. Didn't even get the middle pillar till like Philosophus, and even then, not in the way that people would expect. So that's interesting. But yeah, would you say the abyss is a destination in the crossing of the abyss? Do you see it as a grade, Babe of the Abyss?
Yeah, it's technically a grade, but it's one of those kind of liminal grades, I suppose, like the Dominus Liminus further down the tree. Didn't mean to repeat myself there. Damn Latin. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of like a space in between spaces. That particular grade, I guess. But yeah, the abyss is like the threshold between unmanifest and manifest, I think. Is probably probably an oversimplification, but that's kind of, if I had to distill it down, I'd say that's what it is. The abyss is kind of like the event horizon between two very different destinations, I suppose.
Yeah, let's bring this other comment by Gannicus again. See what you think of this. He says, abyss is a word that means something from which things cannot escape. I'm not sure if the word has that contained within it, because an abyss is like, why can't anyway? Unless they have developed that to that level and then they are able to do it. I think that's maybe why they used it. But using the word abyss, which is a description of topography or geography, topography, it's a description of a physical thing, right? It's not inherent to it that it's something you can't escape. Like, we've all seen the movie Abyss. They got out. Of course, that's another matter. Let's not get into that. But I think it's called I always figured it's called the abyss because it's something you have to risk crossing. There's a danger of falling into it. But of course, if you know the signs and are ready to use them and actually enter into the spiritual state that they entail and invoke, then you're safe. Right? In the Golden Dawn, for example, when we do work with Zax and cross the abyss, it's not considered a risky endeavor because we know what to do, and you've been trained on what to do.
That's very different to the tradition that I came from.
Oh yeah, you guys make a much bigger deal of it. That's why it's so interesting to talk to you about it. Yeah, it's a very big deal for you guys.
Yeah, and it does mess you up.
As we'll find out soon.
Yes, indeed.
So how did you know you had successfully crossed?
Well, the period of despair and hopelessness that I was stuck in for several months came to an end. And I found inner peace again. That was kind of like for me, that was the what I consider to be the marker of that transition happening. But I do think with the crossing of the abyss as well, it's not like a clean cut thing. Like, boom, I've read the call of the 10th ether, I'm in, and then boom, I'm out the other end. There's kind of like it's just like when you're approaching a black hole, you don't fall in straight away to be spaghettified and completely annihilated. The gravity starts to shift and time starts to slow down as you're approaching it. And I kind of felt like that was happening in my life in the lead up to the crossing of the abyss. And I think as I exited, there was still a period of several months of like, you've just gone through an experience that was so intense that it destroyed your sense of self. So you're not just going to be all good after that experience. There's going to be a period of adjustment after that potentially goes on for quite some time.
Yeah. So for as a Golden Dawner, we don't have the advantage of sort of our tradition being fused with our religious views, whereas Thelema function is a religion. You don't have to be completely Thelemic, I understand, to do that tradition, is what I'm told. Though I've heard also contradictory information, and it's fortunately it's not my dog to fight. But you have this beautiful religion, in my opinion, that is modern and interesting and pulls on these great Egyptian sources. It's if I had another life to live, it would be pretty fun, I think, to have been called to that path. Sadly, I was called to the path that I'm called to, which is fine. But we do have something very similar in the Christian tradition to the crossing of the abyss, which you have in Thelema, right? And St. John of the Cross wrote about it and called it the dark night of the spirit. A bunch of you were thinking soul. That's not what it is. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the dark night of the spirit. And it's brutal. God removes God's self from you. All pleasures, all experience of God's self, you feel none of it. You literally become as if someone who can't believe in God. And then what do you do? Do you keep worshiping? Do you keep that openness, that loving, grace-seeking spirit that you had before? Do you maintain that self that you were when you felt God's love and presence, even though it is now gone, and you're given pure iridities, right? The desert, and that will seemingly never end. Do you survive that, or do you give up and fail. And that is described by St. John of the Cross as a gift. This is a gift, that experience. Just like the Babe of the Abyss or the Crossing of the Abyss is not considered something for beginners, is it?
No.
It's almost
Yeah.
even having the opportunity to be ready to do it would be seen sort of like a gift. Maybe something that you partially earned, but certainly something that you had to work for.
Definitely. Yeah, and that description that you just gave of the dark night of the spirit, that as I was listening to you describe that, it hit me hard.
Sounds like I might have been through that, eh? Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, possibly.
It's a miracle I survived, honestly. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel that too, and it's possibly not over. But so you went through it as well, did you?
Oh boy. I wish we had time to talk for hours. Wait, we do. Oh my God, we're here. We can talk about it right now. I guess there's no time like the present, eh? Fuck. Am I gonna do this? Jeez, I mean, I'm the one interviewing you here. Maybe have me on your channel. And yes, and I'll tell you about the Dark Night of the Spirit, which was there's a preamble to it that's very intense called the Dark Night of the Senses. Now, those two experiences or stages of Christian mystical experience, let's not call them initiation because that's really not the appropriate word for them. They're stages of advancement, right? Which is a technical term in our traditions, of course, like initiation. But, they're both contained in a book that he titled Dark Night of the Soul because it's about the soul's journey. But the two dark nights themselves are referred to as Dark Night of the Spirit, which is why I don't get my panties in a wad when people say the term, I went through the Dark Night of the Soul, which is really helpful, right? Because I don't have to be like, that's not what that is. Like, yeah, no, you can say that. That's not what he's talking about in the book. The one thing he doesn't talk about in the book, The Dark Night of the Soul, is a Dark Night of the Soul. He talks about a Dark Night of the Senses, Dark Night of the Spirit. I love talking about this because I think it's a beautiful book. I think you should all read it. And in my opinion, I went through the Dark Night of the Senses in the higher grades, like starting in practice really intensely, and then finished it sort of in Portal, being ready for 5-6. But the Dark Night of the Spirit is not something that happens right away. I think you said you waited 11 years after to go through the Abyss.
Yeah, after
11 years.
Yeah, well, it's not that. Yeah, it wasn't like a deliberate choice, but that's just how long it took for me to feel ready. Yeah,
after knowledge and conversation.
Yeah, so it's like I wanted to be super sure because I feel like in a previous incarnation, in my last incarnation, I did it too soon, so I needed to be extra careful this time. But yeah, it's interesting to hear about the Christian stuff as well, as well as the thelemic stuff, because while I kind of came from a thelemic type of tradition, these days I probably wouldn't consider myself a thelemite. I think my views have changed quite a bit, and when I kind of work the system of the AA, it's most of the time it's been like a self-initiatory journey. So yeah, it's kind of my own journey has evolved over time, and recently I've kind of got more of an appreciation for the Judeo-Christian roots, I suppose, of the Western esoteric tradition, and starting to look into that more. So it's cool to hear that you've got a sort of Christian side to your path as well.
Yeah, I guess we did talk on Zoom, of course, before my conference last summer, but we didn't get to spend much time there. We just sort of howdy-doodied, which was nice to see you in person. It was a bit weird because I'm used to seeing you on YouTube. So it's always fun when the person responds. Normally I just yelling at the screen and no one's even taking notice of what I'm saying. They just keep on their script. But the the Christian experience, like as it's framed there, it was even part of my sort of conversion process, in a way. Yeah, I think it might have been what set it off, because as I was reading that book, which I was required to do for my grade in practicus, like the first part of it, the Dark Night of the Senses, had the answers to what I was going through. Right? It really did have answers to what I was going through. So I'm like, oh, whether I'm Christian or not, this is describing something that I'm experiencing. And so much so that, you know, kind of pulled me into that path a little bit and started that process, I think, before I was even aware that that sort of conversion process was happening. Because I went into the Golden Dawn like most people do as a pagan, right? As a Celtic, Irish, God-loving heathen. And that's most people in the GD, I think, is pagans. Though the early GD had plenty of Christian clergy, even bishops, Catholic priests. You know, there's a lot of rabbis these days, I think. So it's a very, again, it doesn't have a religion. The GD is not. It tells you to have a religion if you can, because to guide and regulate your life, as we say in the Neophyte. So you're meant to, like, you know, that's why we don't tell people what spirits are. In the Golden Dawn, we don't try and define them, because that's for your religion to tell you, or whatever your spiritual belief is. It's not our job. It's not the systems of magic's job to tell you what these things are definitionally. We just work with them in a certain way, right? So yeah, happy to go into that. Let's go into that next time. I'll tell you all about my little journey through the dark night of the spirit and stuff. But I want to keep the focus on you, because I you know, it's going to be, you know, I'm not going to have you forever. So I know a lot of people want to hear us talk about that. But yeah, it does exist in the Christian tradition. And so hopefully people will keep reading Dark Night of the Soul, and maybe I can convert you all the way to Christianity. No, I'm not a proselytizer. I'm not a believer that that's a healthy thing to do. Plus, if you drag someone into something, you're going to have to drag them the whole way through it, right? We all know that. So let people, spiritual freedom is number one.
Yeah, and the number one way of chasing people away from Christianity in particular is to try and, you know, shove it down their throats, like so often tends to happen with the more evangelical branches of it. Unfortunately, because just because something is delivered in a terrible way that's misinterpreted and twisted doesn't mean that the core belief is wrong. But it's very easy to scare people off when it's presented in a certain way.
Yeah. I mean, when I was first in seminary in 2000, we asked about, like, how do we deal with, like, the whole pedophilia issue in the church? They're like, oh, don't worry about it. As soon as people realize the percentage in the public school system, they're not going to be even thinking about how much it's in the church anymore. And they were right. 25 years later, they're completely right, because it's like 5% in mainstream churches. It's a bit higher in Roman Catholics, like 8%, but it's like 25% in the school system. You know, so yeah. After I graduated seminary, I went to work as a minister in ministry in the Anglican Church of Canada. My first day, the kids I was working with told me about the previous minister abusing them.
Jeez.
Day one. Yeah, no surprise that 12 months later I was living in Ireland playing in a Celtic band. I couldn't do it. I couldn't spend my career dealing with kids, you know, kids getting abused and me having to decide whether I want to call the police or lose my job. Or, like, sorry, keep my job or call the police. Yeah, rough stuff indeed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I worked in the church. I worked as, you know, and I loved it. And but I had to go independent, like you. I had to sort of go independent, and I've always been kind of a Christo-pagan, which is just very hermetic. You know, it's like, did Zosimos think Jesus was the savior? Yeah, of course. He's like, yeah, he's the savior. Would he have thought he's the savior? He would have been like, what's that mean? What's that even mean? What do you mean the savior? What do you mean the savior? Of course he's a savior. Like, there's only one? What are you talking about? Come on.
What,
Come
like,
on.
You mean like Caesar Augustus, the savior?
Yeah.
Not what I had known, guys.
Well, you have a lot of fans in this channel. Thanks everyone for the beautiful comments. We've had really amazing questions and comments today. I feel more like we were doing where this is almost less a podcast or chit chat or even interview and more of like a stream like the streamers do, you know, where you're talking mainly with your fans. But you have such awesome fans. They keep saying really cool things. Yeah, I don't know what, you know, the fact is we might get cut to spaghetti if we go into a black hole. But obviously Matthew McConaughey can survive it. I mean, you know, he's Matthew McConaughey. He's not going to get turned into spaghetti. So, yeah.
All right.
He just went in, said the magic words. All right. And the black hole was like, yeah, you can survive. Here, let us enter you into this secret dimension outside of time.
Mm. And
so here's another
UAPs.
Oh my god, it's not one of my favorite movies at all, but it is a great film. Yeah, good film. Can you explain the difference between the experience of attaining solar consciousness and achieving KCHGA, knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, and crossing the abyss? See, that's an easy one. Just tell us the difference between the solar consciousness, knowledge and conversation, and the crossing the abyss. If anyone can do it, it's you.
Yeah. So, well, let's see. What's the definition of solar consciousness there? Because in one sense, I would consider that kind of quite a similar concept to knowledge and conversation with a holy guardian angel. I guess where we see, I guess if it's like in the holy books when it's describing this the holy books or some other commentary, it's describing the sun as the center of the universe rather than the earth, and then that becomes the center of consciousness, the sun representing our divine self. I think is probably what they're getting at with that, rather than the earthly self. That would certainly have parallels with knowledge and conversation. And of course, knowledge and conversation is a task of the great of Tippereth, which is the sun. So, yeah, I mean, knowledge and conversation is very much about discovering the divine part of our nature. And further down, at least in the AA grades, in the neophyte, you get or probationer around there, you get the vision of the angel, you get the initial, like, oh, look, this is a thing that you can discover one day, that you have a divine nature, and then you actually have the experience of that with knowledge and conversation. And then the crossing of the abyss, I didn't mean...
Yeah, they didn't mean the solar initiation as distinct from KCGA.
Right. Yep.
So that's cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, I do think it's fair to say they are distinct. Certainly Abramelin practitioners wouldn't want those two things conflated. However, if you look at the Hermetica, like the holy guardian angel is the same thing as the holy daimon, your daimon, your nous. It is your nous. Your nous is a daimon, which gives you access to all things in all places. Right. And I think a lot of us would describe that as the solar initiation, right? Where your soul and your nous are brought into, you know, this, where the soul becomes the throne of the nous, and you then achieve this clear vision of reality or freedom from illusion, an embodied understanding and sense of the nature of this reality, as opposed to the nature of the immortal, eternal realities.
Yeah, and in the more AA type of tradition, knowledge and conversation, it's really, although you have an experience of the divine in the form of your own inner divinity, it's really what J. Daniel Gunther would describe as a hieros gamos, and use that symbol to describe knowledge and conversation, where it's like the union of yourself with the divine. So it's kind of two things in one, and it's like a meeting of heaven and earth. And I think, well, from my own reading of the Adeptus grades between knowledge and conversation, and then the crossing of the abyss, it's really about gradually transforming yourself into a better vessel of that divine nature, by refining it from what it was when you first attained knowledge and conversation. And then the crossing of the abyss is like the final nail in the coffin of, thinking that limited self has any importance. And so it's really about transforming ourselves into the angel, I think, over time, or transforming ourselves into that divine consciousness. And there's different systems use different terminology for that. You describe the nous and the soul, and then you've got the idea of Atman in the Vedanta schools, and the Theosophists talk about the 7 bodies and all that sort of thing, and it's always different languages for a similar kind of process, I think.
Yeah, I'm not one of these people that likes to completely separate things and say, oh, they're different traditions, so they can't be compared, or they can't be compared, or especially substantially compared. I think there is, because that's the academic point of view. That's the etic approach to this, which is say, hey, don't compare one tradition to another, because you're just comparing gross commonalities and doing so by only ignoring all detail and nuance, right? Yes. So we understand the etic approach and how we need to think about things rationally and academically, but the human experience is messy. And in the messiness of the human experience, we end up finding out that, you describe the crossing the abyss, I hear St. John of the Cross. And at the end of the day, since we are both human, we're not experiencing reality in these harsh, categorically cut and dry terms that etic scholarship would like us to have neatly organized into different boxes that never meet, right? In reality, we have very common experiences. We just think of them in different ways. And so it's not completely unreasonable to say that they might be similar or in some ways the same. I can't believe I'm making a case for conflating things here, but so be it. Yeah, there is a commonality in the realm of human experience, which I think allows us to draw connecting lines between traditions, no matter how disparate. We find this when we talk with regular human beings from varieties of traditions. They describe stuff, we're like, wow, that's what I went through. We just, like you said, call it different things.
There was
the
another
question, I think. Yeah, the person. So what they're let me phrase what I think they're asking. What was the nature of the journey from knowledge and conversation to being prepared for the abyss? What are the features, sort of? That's, correct me if I'm wrong, wonderful audience member, but let me know. You're wondering what's that like? What are the expectations, even perhaps? What's the labors? What are the tests and trials of that journey from KNC to abyss?
It's a good question, and it's not something that gets spoken about enough. It gets spoken about even less so than knowledge and conversation itself, possibly even crossing the abyss. And there's a lot in that to answer that. But I guess the way to look at it that makes the most sense from the perspective of the AA system as a guide is to look at, look at the tasks of the grade. What are the Sephiroth that are between Tifereth and the abyss, and then what are the tasks of those grades, and what are the tasks that correspond to the different paths in that kind of second of the 3 parts of the tree of life. And if you look at it, you've got things like for the path of Lamed, you've got Liber 30, which is all about it's all about moral principles. It's all about not letting the elemental parts of our nature, the sylphs, the salamanders, the gnomes, and the sylphs, the salamanders, the gnomes, and the undines, got there in the end, becoming unbalanced and then venturing into sin, like the greed and avarice of the earth, and so on. I might have botched that. It's been a while since I actually looked at Liber 30, but yeah. So there's this idea of like moral refinement, and then another task is, well, let me just say this. So there's 4 yogas, which are like the main yogas, according to many yogic practitioners, and 3 of those appear in some form on the lower part of the tree, like the grades below Tiferet, and there's one that doesn't appear, and that's Karma Yoga. So my theory is that Karma Yoga is something that needs to be performed in the Adeptus grade, and again, that is all about trying to eliminate actions and types of behavior in our life that create karma for us by performing dharmic actions instead. And so you start to see a theme emerging here of the refinement of our character, to be a more worthy vessel for the divine. And so I think that really, in a nutshell, is what it's about. And yeah, that's what I would say about that. And another thing I think is, I think we need to do the working to attain knowledge and conversation twice in the AA system, because yeah, I did a whole video on that that explains that. But if you read Crowley's texts carefully, he seems to be saying that, which is interesting. So that's my very meandering answer to that question.
Yeah, that's good. Some more good questions. These are yeah. Some channel members sending questions too. Join my channel, everybody. There's lots of great videos. I got an awesome invocation writing workshop. Just, join for a spell and see what you're missing. Here's a question. We're just going to do all these. I understand it's subjective, obviously, but above solar, it seems like things may get a bit nonlinear. Yes, and I want to say something really important here that's actually not often understood about my tradition, which is the highest grade is 5-6. I don't know. It's not even some Golden Dawn people are going to be like tearing their hair out when I say this, but hear me out. And most of you actually know what I'm talking about. That's the last magical initiation for us. The ones after that are considered mystical. And many Golden Dawn adepts, many of the best in history, weren't interested in them because they can have those experiences anyway. You don't have to do this additional grade work and get tested and go through this big ceremony to have the mystical experiences above Tiferet. That's the work of the adept in Tiferet, right? I think it's the same in your tradition, where once you've gone into 5-6, you have path working access to all the paths. Before that, you only have access to some of them. Is that the same?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Okay, that's just us.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah. So what do you think of this question that above the solar, it seems that things get nonlinear? I would say everything's nonlinear all the time, but generally in our tradition, the grades go from Malkut. In Golden Dawn, it goes from Malkut. You have the Neophyte, Zelator, Theoricus, Practicus, Philosophus, all in Malkut. Then you go into Portal, traveling up the path of Tav in Yesod. Portal's in Yesod. Then you go up the path beyond that into Tiferet, and those are your 3 degrees of grade. And then beyond that, it's just mystical experiences of the higher Sephiron paths. So that's a very different understanding, I'm aware, than most people are aware of in the Golden Dawn. And we generally don't talk about it, but when we're doing a kind of podcast like we're doing here, comparing our very common and similar experiences and journeys in very similar traditions, I think it's an appropriate thing to lay out the distinction there, just so that we can talk about it, because when else are we going to get a chance to talk about it? If not now, when? And here's another great question. The abyss isn't really a true Kabbalistic concept. Really, in true Kabbalah, misspelled Kabbalah there aren't really planetary associations to the tree of life. That's not true. The planets were associated with the tree of life in early Kabbalah. There's no such thing as the true Kabbalah because there's too many traditions of Jewish Kabbalah. Kabbalah came along in the 12th century, and there's many schools of it. There's the original, there's so many. Oh my God. And they have completely different points of view on things. Most of them are not even compatible with each other. So which one's true? Tell me which one is true. I'd love to know. I'm sure we all would love to know. What do you think of that? And there's another one.
What do I think of?
Yeah, the true Kabbalah idea, and the planet associations. I mean,
it certainly seemed to be emphasized a lot more in Hermetic Kabbalah, but
yeah,
is anything really a true version of something? I mean, these are all just systems that we come up with to try and understand something which is incomprehensible in the end.
We're talking about maps, not territory. The territory isn't the map. It's something we experience. And that's why we have common experiences, even though we're using different maps. Because like, oh, what? Did you have a dead end when you took your sheep down that road? Yeah, I had a dead end too. That's crazy. Our maps both say totally different things. Mine has a waterfall. Yours has a cave. But we both just hit a big rock. That's the terrain. Our maps are always insufficient.
Very true.
So this Fool is Magus, thank you for being a channel member, much appreciated, says, I don't know, the abyss isn't really real, so to speak. It's more of an aesthetic, if you ask me. This is definitely a question for you. What's your thoughts on that? An aesthetic would seem to discount the entire experience that we're talking about, I think, if it were just an aesthetic.
Well, the abyss, well, this isn't really real. The abyss would answer back that this isn't really real. This is the realm that isn't real. But yeah, I guess on a certain level of reality, in inverted commas, it wouldn't be real. But I mean, the whole experience of the abyss is completely deconstructing our idea of reality. And actually, one of the tasks in the AA system, in the Adeptus grades leading up to the crossing of the abyss, is the tasks detailed in Liber Os Abysmi vel Dat, which is about the intellectual crossing of the abyss, rather than actually doing it as a mystical thing. You've got to prepare yourself intellectually. And basically what that involves is reading a whole bunch of stuff like Hume and Immanuel Kant's Prolegomena, which talks about how you've got the noumenon and the phenomenon, and we live in the world of phenomenon, and we can't ever touch the noumenon because all we know is our perceptions, and so nothing is real, right down to the most fundamental principles that we think about the universe in terms of. It's all just perception, and it's all illusion, and nothing that we think exists is actually real. So that's kind of, I mean, that's the state of reality below the abyss. And I suppose the abyss is a concept that we came up with in this reality. So in that sense, it's not real. Sure. Yeah. I don't know if any of that makes sense, or if I just...
Yeah, of course I get it. We're talking about like what the philosopher or psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan calls the difference between the real and the symbolic. But he does point out that there is a real for us. And if you jump off a building, you'll find out what that is when you hit the ground and die. So the experience of the real is almost like in him for Lacan, one might say, the death. Death is the only real thing, which is a materialist point of view. Let's be clear. He's definitely taking a materialist point of view, but it's worth thinking about. I think in terms of, you know, the maps we're talking about, the maps that we overlay our experience of reality, even how our brain, you know, cuts out most of perception so that we don't lose our minds. We've got a few more comments here. We'll just do them because why not? If you can throw super chats, it's much appreciated. Streaming software is unfortunately expensive, and I appreciate all the help we can get. Even Regardi said that Kabbalah. Oh, you're upset about what I said about Kabbalah's dating. Okay, Allison. Yeah, even Regardi said that Kabbalah was even older than the 13th century. I did say 12th century, so it is older than the 13th century. It dates to the 12th century, to the 1100s. We know exactly when Kabbalah emerged because we have books. And it's a real tradition that actually started. Well, if you're talking about Kabbalah before that, you're talking about what we call proto-Kabbalah. So you can say it's the same thing, Sefer Yetzirah, that sort of stuff. But definitely, you know, and this is something, and I was on your side of the fence for a long time until I got beaten over the head by enough academics, professors, and rabbis. And, you know, it is what it is. The origins of the Kabbalah are the origins. And but proto-Kabbalah, you know, you can call proto-Kabbalah Kabbalah. That's okay. No one gets upset about that. If you want to talk about the heck a lot mysticism of St. Paul and the pre-Christian Jewish tradition, you can call that Kabbalah. People know what you mean. It's just, technically speaking, Kabbalah didn't exist then. There was no tree of life or anything like that at that later point on. Our perceptions of truth evolve, I think, says Raven Tarot Meditation. Yes, could be quite true. And someone says they're going through the grades of the Golden Dawn, deepen their faith in Christ. Well, it's meant to deepen your faith in any religion, whatever your religion is, right? That's the whole point. That's why pagans and people, Buddhists and Christians and Catholics and Protestants, everyone who joined the Golden Dawn of all these different spirit, that they did it to deepen their faith in God. Why do you think bishops were doing it? Can you imagine like Anglican bishops, basically Anglo-Catholics, like going into ceremony after ceremony with Egyptian gods and Kabiri and like all of these pagan symbols, right? Without having a sense that this is connecting them deeper to their own faith. It's wild to think about it, of course, but yeah, that's how it does. So yeah, I'm really glad that the GD tradition, deepen your faith, that is what it's meant to be. It's definitely not meant to convert you to something else at all. Yeah, what is real, Morpheus? Yeah. Yeah, well, it's got some people debating definitions and all of that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that you love what we're doing. We're doing the best we can. We're just human beings who have, you know, traveled in distant lands for many years and returned to tell you about it on YouTube. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. Yeah, let's do a little commercial break. You have a chance to run to the bathroom if you need to, or grab a drink of water. We're going to play a little commercial break from the conference that Eleftheria graciously was a member of last year. Hopefully we can get him back again next year. We're doing it in Austin, Texas, November 6th through 8th. We also have a winter workshop with Dr. Terry Burns. I'm flying her here in a week to Vancouver to do an Enochian practical workshop and some theory lectures. You can get all of that and access to Eleftheria's lecture and all of that stuff by registering for 2025 Arcane Research Society. It's an investment in your future, your learning, and gets you involved in a really cool community. You enjoy the people, right, Frater? It's a pretty cool crew we have there, and going to be even crazier and bigger this year. We're having 22 presenters this year, 6 online, 16 in person. This next year is going to be off the hook. All right, let's see if I can find the promo. This might be the previous one. Oh, there we go. All right. So there you go. That ad was, of course, for before the conference. Now that the conference is over, you can still enroll in Dr. Chato's year-long course, which starts next week or this week in 7 days. I have to upload and drop the videos tonight. That's still available, though not to sign up yet. I have to actually have a lot to do this weekend. So check in on that on Monday if you want to do Dr. Chato's academic year-long course, undergraduate level aimed course in Western esotericism. A lot of universities wanted her to give them the course. We got it. You're welcome. Because universities would charge a lot more. Yep. And you can sign up for the EnokiaCon 2026 event. Still, it's as a course, and all the money goes to the presenters. So, every time someone signs up to it, I get to send this man a few coins for Frappuccino or whatever your tasty treat is of choice. You don't seem like you're a sweets guy, are you?
Oh, I mean, I've got a bit of a sweet tooth.
Oh, you do? Oh.
But I mean, yeah, usually if I'm drinking a coffee, it'll be, well, it depends how much of a rush I'm in. If I've got things to do, it'll be an espresso, so I can go straight down. But yeah, sweet, bitters, whatever. Yeah,
I'd
savory.
always rather have like a savory thing over a sweet thing, pretty much. Like if it's like, between some like bruschetta on a nice thing, I'd rather have that than a cookie. When I was young, I loved sweets, but it's something about savory. Yeah, we're back. So thanks for everyone being here and sticking around. Here's a okay, we'll do this question. We're on a roll with these questions, so we may as well. But some people think that the true history doesn't date back to the 12th century in the way that you think it does. Well, it's not what I think. I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you, what is known by scholars. Because of Atlantis and Lemuria, there's a theory about the Tartarian Empire. Yeah, the Tartarian thing is nonsense. That's all nonsense. That's people who don't. Yeah, that's silly. Yeah, we built the buildings we have. They weren't here when we got here. We have the history of all the records of that. But I don't need to debunk it. Lore Lodge did a great debunking of that. It's a nightmare. When you create these new sort of I don't even know what you call them, hysteria trends. You do it by like layering so many untrue facts one after the other so rapidly that it's very hard to debunk them. Because how do you debunk someone when they speak for 60 seconds and not a single thing they said is true? It's overwhelming. It's a surplus of falsehoods that leads some people to give credit to it. It's sort of like the Carson, with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, like trying to pretend that the Emerald Tablets of Hermes that are distinct historical text, there's some version of them from Atlantis, or he conflated the other ones. At least we're not here to debunk that stuff. We're not going to even talk about it anymore. There's lots of people who can debunk that stuff for you. Yeah. If you think that our history is not true, after three, this is not the channel to debate these things, but I do appreciate that you're interested in this stuff and just keep going. If you keep an open mind, here's the thing you need to do actually. So if you want to know how any scholar will approach this stuff, the first thing that is how you tell real scholars from bullshit scholars. When you have a theory, the first thing you do is research to disprove it. Whereas these phony scholars will spend all their time researching to prove what they want to be true. First, you have to study to disprove a thing. Things can only be true if you can't disprove them. If you can disprove them, they're not true. So pay attention when you have an idea or are curious about something. First, try and disprove it. That's the way to stay sane. And here's thank you for another super chat. This is very kind of you guys. What are both your thoughts on the explosion of interest in esoterica and occult topics that are taking place, and what's the reasons why? We're going to do these questions because aren't they good ones, Frater? And then we're going to do the earlier question that I forgot about. Who's our favorite living occultist? It wasn't a super chat, but it's a fun question. We all love debating our favorite occult authors. right? Who doesn't like debating occult authors? We'll get to that. I haven't forgotten you. So yeah, what's your thoughts on this explosion of interest in esoterica and occult topics, and why?
Well, I think I think that the modern society that we live in is disillusioned a lot of people, and many of the answers that are offered to us about what the point of life is, that were grounded in materialism and secularism and even really strident atheism, are unsatisfactory to people, and because their lives are difficult, and they're disillusioned with, how it's hard to get on in the system, so to speak. They start to question the prevailing worldview, and so that leads them in some cases it leads them back to tradition, back to going to Catholic or Orthodox churches or whatever. In some cases, it leads them to the esoteric, and particularly in the age of the internet, where there's information is more accessible than ever. I think there's more of an opportunity to explore it. I think the fact that many people were stuck in their houses over a few years for a certain reason meant that they had more time for introspection and to explore this kind of thing. And I think that some of this explosion takes the form of, like, not necessarily what we're talking about today with Golden Dawn and Thelemic type of stuff, but like witchcraft and neo-paganism as well. So like the explosion of witch talk and all of that sort of thing. In that case, I think that was linked to like the social phenomenon of Me Too and like questioning patriarchal structures. So for those people that are attracted to that witchcraft thing, it was very much attached to that, at least in the TikTok kind of incarnation of being interested in witchy things. So it does seem to be linked to this disillusionment, for whatever reason, with the prevailing mainstream narrative of society that we have today or have had in the past. And probably a sense of deep spiritual longing as well, because we're so cut off from anything spiritual in the society of today. And I think people are learning that they need to reconnect with that. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, the idea, the dream, the humanitarian secular dream of removing religion and having an enlightened humanitarian planet didn't really work, did it? Didn't pan out as they thought it might or hoped it would. And what it left us with was something that G.K. Chesterton warned us about, one who does not believe in something does not believe in nothing. They believe in anything. Relativism, utter relativism. Our professors warned us about this 25 years ago, saying this is what would happen. And I had a hard time believing them. Like I had a lot of radical feminist professors, and we would say, what's the biggest problem that's going to happen in the next 20 years? And they'd say, oh, anti-intellectualism, for sure. Which is funny because, that's what we saw. Like, they taught us things like Derrida and post-structuralist philosophy, but they would be completely opposed to how it's been abused in the modern culture wars, right? It's been completely misused, but we won't get into that too much. So it's interesting. Yeah, you agree that they removed what's sacred. I tend to think that it's, my mom's an astrologer. I think a lot astrologically, and I think, we've moved out of the Piscean age. We're in this liminal space before the Aquarian age really begins. So we're dealing with a lot of turmoil, and we will for the rest of our lives and beyond that. But people, I think, want to evolve into being the priest rather than, kneeling before the priest. I think it might be that simple sometimes. Sometimes I think that people want power and a sense of agency. So I think that's another factor as we become increasingly a world of control, dominance, and global technocracy. We feel like our human spirit and soul is at risk. Like the basic and most fundamental, most essential quality in being a human is spiritual freedom. It must be, because we die without it.
Yeah,
So
fully agree with that.
yeah, good question. Thanks for asking that. Let's get wild and crazy and talk about who might be our favorite. Is it our favorite occult author, or is it the best one? It'd be more fun if they ask which is the best, because it's hard to answer that. But yeah, what was the question? Who was your favorite?
That is really hard to answer.
Yeah,
I have
of
to
course.
think
That's why
about
it's
that.
fun.
And
I
particularly,
mean,
if we're talking
usually
about
it's whoever people's reading right now, right?
yeah, yeah, or whoever has been the most handy to read with the particular type of magic that I'm hyper fixating on at the moment.
Which is? Oh, well, you've
Well,
already talked
it's
about that. Yeah.
well, it's yeah. I mean, Enochian is a big part of my world,
Yeah.
and my practice, and I think that Aaron Leach's books are fantastic on that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
And it was incredible to meet him at EnochiaCon, at least digitally, and yeah, really humbling that he was so complimentary of my kind of own magical practice with the Jebberfell operation and stuff, and that was really affirming. And it was a great conference anyway. So I know you've already plugged it, but
Thank you. No, I'm glad you enjoyed it, being part of it.
Yeah.
One of the unique things about it, I asked Aaron because he messaged me on the Monday. His flight wasn't till night, and I just assumed he'd want to go enjoy the city, but he was just sitting in the hotel base lobby, and I was like, oh damn! I threw on my shoes and ran down the street to where I put him up, and met him in the lobby and took him to the beach, and we enjoyed sitting on the beach in the beautiful fresh Vancouver air, which is a beautiful smoky Vancouver breeze. Full with beautiful plant scents. And then we went to lunch at the Cactus Club on the beach, and spent 5 hours just talking as people like he and I could talk in ways that we often don't get to, and sharing a lot of stuff. It was great. It was powerful. And we talked a bit about you and your work, and we have to get you guys together, like hopefully maybe in Prague 2027. Maybe we can make that happen. Because the fact that you both made that discovery, which you've covered extensively on your channel, is remarkable. And the fact that, of course, now you've been in touch with Brown. We not talked about that yet. Like, we don't even have enough time tonight. We don't have even close enough time tonight to talk. It's already been 2 hours to talk about all this stuff. But fortunately, we're friends and we can do this whenever we want, right? Your wife and kids don't really need you, right?
Oh no, of course not.
So I love that this person, Mr. Brightstar 134, asked this question in the most problematic and inflammatory way you could. In your opinion, who's the best living occult author? Dear Lord. I mean, it's a tough question to answer. Do you want to go first, or should I ramble and rant first?
I don't think that I can do the question justice.
You can't even do it.
Yeah,
maybe if you're still watching, Mr. Brightstar, reframe that in a slightly more answerable way that's not so problematic. Because best living occult author, best in what way? Like, what does best mean? Does anyone have thoughts on what the best is? God is the greatest occult author, someone says. Yeah, let's go with that. We can go with that.
I like that. And she is the greatest living because it lives.
There you go. The book of nature. That would be the classical. That's what Agrippa would want to hear. That's what Trithemius would want to hear. Nature. The book of nature is the greatest occult author, which is another way, of course, of saying God. Absolutely. But we can answer the question. Let's talk about some of our favorite authors. That's what I think that's what's interesting. Do you have some favorite ones you're reading these days, or ones that you've read in the past that you still are like, this is my go-to guy? I mean, there's so many obvious answers: Stephen Skinner, Joseph Peterson. The list is so long, I don't even want to say another name because that means I'll have to leave some names off of it. It's just such a long list. We're in the golden age of occultism and magic. The golden age is now. It's like it's in some ways it's the worst time because there's so much. There's almost too much, overabundant, a surplus of information and distraction. But at the same time, yeah, it might have been easier when you just had like one grimoire and that's all you had your whole life. So you just did that. Like that actually might have been pretty cool when it's like, I can't believe I found one of these on the roadside and I somehow know how to read as a peasant. So now I can just do this my whole life and then create my own system out of it. Who knows? But yeah, what are been some formative authors in your life? Maybe ones that people might not expect even.
Okay. Well, in terms of, do you mean formative in terms of my overall worldview now, or formative in terms of my spiritual or magical practice, or what do you mean by
that? Tell us about ones you think people should hear about at this time.
Okay.
I'm asking the question like an adept should ask it. Who do you think people should hear about? What's your new saying?
Well, I'm going to take us right outside the world of the occult for this one. And I'm going to recommend a book that I read, what was it, 1-2 years ago now, which really challenged and shifted my worldview, which was Dominion by Tom Holland. Not Spider-Man Tom Holland, obviously, but the historian Tom Holland. And it's basically like a history of the Western world, and how Christianity fundamentally, radically changed the Western mind and created the Western mind as we know it today. And it's I think it's important to understand that, because even in the Western esoteric tradition, there seems to be a lot of knee-jerk reactions against anything Christian and rejecting Christianity, but we don't actually understand how deeply embedded Christian ideas are in just the way that the Western civilization sees the world, and how that's actually very different to other parts of the world. And I think it's important for people to understand that. And it's important for Western esotericists as well, because of course so much of that came out of Jewish and Christian mysticism. And it's just a mind-blowing book, and will change the way you think about Christianity as well, because we have the kind of modern scientific revolution propaganda that the church plunged everything into the dark ages, and it was just an age of ignorance and darkness. But there was also a lot of universities that were founded by the church as well. And a lot of ways that our way of looking at reality changed for the better as a result of that history. And Tom Holland is not a Christian, so he's not like proselytizing to you. He's a secular liberal historian, and he's reached these conclusions. So that to me has been the most consequential book that I've read in the last few years, I would say.
The premise of it is one that I was naturally desirous to agree with, of course, right? As a Christian, I would love to agree with him. So what did I do? This is for all you followers of the Tartaria theory out there. No shade, but the first thing I did was look for the critique of his premise. And it was interesting because the critique was pretty good. The best critique I could find was that his theory discounts the role of virtue ethics in Greek religion, in Nicomachean ethics that we get from Aristotle. Like, it discounts that as if it just didn't play any factor at all. That was the critique I heard. But I think it does have a lot of weight, his theory, still, because Christianity did amazing things for women, especially in the early hundreds of years, the first few hundreds of years. It was women could go into it if they didn't want to get married, because often they wouldn't have a choice in who they could marry, but they could go into the church. Or married women could then go into the Christian church and find that they actually had a lot of authority, leadership roles, and power. Right? The early Christians were called the holy, the hagioi. That later became just the saints, but originally it was everyone. So you could be one of the holy as a married woman, and your husband's, off busy doing business at the shrine of Dionysus all day, every day. Well, that's what he says. That's what he says he's doing, right? Who knows if he's actually down at the temple of Bacchus or something like that. But you could then be a Christian and have some power and a life bigger than the life you would have had. So there's lots of things like that Christianity definitely brought. So I'm a big fan of Holland's work in general. So I'm glad that you brought that book up. I think at the very least it should keep being read as much as it is being read, and people here should go read it. There's nothing as good as reading the stuff that opposes your worldview. If you're not a Christian, go check it out. Another great book is Northrop Frye's The Great Code, which looks at the role the Bible has played in Western history and how inextricable it is from our modern worldview. Here's a question that points this out exactly. Living in the end times, no, says Liang 12. I don't know who you are, but thank you for being here. And I would say no, we're not living in the end times. To answer another question that was followed up with in a super chat, I can't believe how many people. You're all being the best audience today. This is like we're barely podcasting. We're more just streaming like the kids do, right, Frater? This is like so much interaction. You're a popular guy. Yeah, the age of Aquarius, of course, is cyclical because it's a wheel. The wheel keeps spinning, but the time periods take a while, right? So it's an actual astrological, astronomical countdown. Like it's a fixed clock, you could say. We can't accelerate or slow down the progression of the zodiac. So we'll be in the age of Aquarius for thousands of years, just like we were in the age of Aries during the Egyptian Empire. Taurus during the Egyptian Empire. Aries, and then Pisces for the Christian era. Pisces, we went into the Christian era, and before the Egyptian era, we were in the Taurus era. And they say that that's like, when society was, hunter-gatherer, right, of the earth. Though, of course, recent discoveries, Göbekli Tepe, all that, who knows what we're going to discover. Maybe we will find Atlantis. I don't know. As far as I know, it's just something that appeared in a work of fiction by Plato. But hey, I was born a New Ager. I'm going to die a New Ager. Everything else aside. So Atlantis, sign me up. Lemuria, pretty sure that was that was about lemurs. How did lemurs migrate? Well, there must have been a continent called Lemuria that the lemurs bounced to get to this other place, and then they discovered that wasn't true. But I do love all that stuff. New Ager to the core, baby. So here's a super chat question. Great take on the Age of Horus, Frater RC. Well, I didn't actually say anything about the Age of Horus, but thank you. I'll take the credit. That was going to be my follow-up. Do you think it's cyclical? Right. Cool. And
I think that the end times, I don't necessarily think there's such a thing as like all the world, all the volcanoes erupting and the world ending and that sort of thing. But I think what we've talked about in terms of the end of one age and the beginning of another is certainly something that is real, and I feel like we're in one of those cusps at the moment. And
we are. We are. Yeah. So there's lots of end times, but is it the end of the end, the Christian end times? I don't think the John the Evangelist or John the Revelator. I mean, you got to admit that's the coolest name a person's ever had. Like, please put on my gravestone if I get one. Just Sharpie in underneath my name, the Revelator Strikes Back or something like that. It's such a cool name. But like, he's writing about Nero. We know he's writing about the fall of the Roman Empire. Doesn't mean that there isn't prophetic stuff going into him through his noose about some other kind of event. We don't know. I, as a Christian, tend to take the book of Revelation as the apocalypsis, the unveiling. And the reason it's in the Bible, singular and not plural, it's the book of Revelation. This is traditional and this is actual theology for you. The revelation in the book of Revelation is the return of Jesus Christ. That's what the revelation is. There isn't revelations. There's just one. It's the unveiling, which is apocalypsis, the unveiling of Christ as God. Because up until he comes back, we're not certain. That's the idea, right? You don't know for sure. But then when he comes back with a big sword coming out of his mouth, big sword, Jesus Christ, Church of the Sword Mouth would be my church if I made one. Jesus Christ, the Church of the Sword Mouth, or Jesus Christ, the Sword Mouth, or something like that. It's just great. I love that imagery. The Bible, book of Revelation, is so amazing. It's so beautiful, right? I've read it out loud at beaches to friends around campfires. It's amazing. But that image of him with a sword coming out of his mouth is my favorite image in the entire Bible, I think. So Robert Wang, someone says Robert Wang is a favorite occultist. I think Robert Wang is incredibly underappreciated, underestimated. You know the word. I'm forgetting the actual word. Yeah, I think he's underappreciated. Robert Wang is underestimated. That's not the real word. Daniel List, aka Dark Journalist, talks a lot about Steiner's eighth sphere and how Ahriman will come to power through tech and trap consciousness in a virtual sphere. I mean, isn't that what's happening? I mean, I'm in Canada. We can't. Every time you guys post news, I just get a blank thing that says you cannot see this in Canada. I'm in a sphere. In Canada, we're more censored than Russia and China. Maybe not Russia. Well, I have a friend there, and you can use a VPN in Russia. You can't use a VPN in Canada. They'll shut down our internet if I use a VPN. So in some ways, Russia is even more free than us. China doesn't block news. I mean, they block the internet, but not their internet, right? So we are living in this kind of sphere. But then there's people like the Jesuit priest, the prophet Teilhard de Chardin at the beginning of the 20th century. He spoke of the noosphere. Are you familiar with his work, Frater?
A little bit, yeah. I've skimmed read Omega Point at one point.
He talks as if he's predicting the internet as we now know it. But he really isn't. He's talking about the Holy Spirit sort of connecting our consciousnesses around the planet. So in that regard, I think it very much is a competition between, we have the technology. We are a mass consciousness now. We are. So it's about how we use it, how we deal with our consciousness, how we take up that challenge to be responsible human souls that strive upwards and not downwards. That would be my answer to that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. And if it wasn't for the internet, this podcast wouldn't be happening. My YouTube channel wouldn't exist. So it can definitely
we wouldn't know each other.
No, we wouldn't. No.
Yeah.
So unless we both attended, the captain's birthday party from halfway across the world in some alternative timeline somewhere. But I do think that there is a lot of evil that
I'm going to send him this podcast. I'm going to send this to him for sure. Oh yeah. Hey, Mr. Martin, break a leg. Yeah. Oh, of course I will. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think
so. So we're using the noosphere or the internet, this web of consciousness, for the work of the Holy Spirit, you could say, or just the work of the Spirit, for bringing life and light. That's the Hermetic view, right? We're bringing life and light into the world through these technologies, but the technologies don't like it, right? It's why some of us are shadow banned, some of us aren't, and it's why For example, if you interview Dean Radin, the professor and PhD who's written the book Real Magic, he wrote The Noetic Universe. We all know Dean Radin. We all love him, hopefully. You have him on your podcast stops growing. Like Dr. Puka had to move the video to members only or unlisted so she could keep growing her channel. Like they basically throttled her channel. That's why I haven't had him on my channels, because it would completely terminate growth. They would not stop. They stopped recommending videos. Look at a lot of the channels that have had him on. Their subs just plummets. So there is this Ahrimanic war for control, for sure. I mean, what else is digital IDs, global surveillance, scanning us all, barcodes on the back of our neck? I mean, 666. It's yeah, Apple Pay.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the stuff that has been coming out, there's this one guy in particular who's kind of is affiliated with the WEF, who always has these terrible takes on this topic, which I think are incredibly Ahrimanic. Yuval Harari, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh yeah, what a piece of work.
Yeah, I did a whole
He
video.
hates humans.
Oh yeah,
he hates us so much.
To hate God as well. Yeah.
What?
He seems to hate God as well.
He's one of the most scary human beings I've ever heard. Ever.
Yeah.
He makes my blood run cold.
Yeah. That everything that comes out of his mouth is pure Ahrimanic consciousness, as far as I'm concerned. If you want to understand Steiner's idea, just go and listen to some of his interviews about how AI can rewrite the Bible and human beings are all just, whatever.
Steiner would be like, ja, genau, es ist ihn, wer ich gereden hat. That's the guy I was talking about. There you go. I was right.
Yeah.
Steiner, for all his craziness, I grew up in the Waldorf school system. I'm a Waldorfian. I'm an anthroposophist, for lack of a, yeah, you can call me that. But he said he did say a lot of crazy, nutty stuff that I think is insane, but a lot of really amazing prophecies. Same as like Paul Casey, no, not Paul Foster, Edgar Cayce. Yeah, when you get into the business of prophecy, they're not all going to be hits. Anyone who's gambled knows that. You just you do the best you can, and also the future changes, I think. So that's another problem with prophecy. It's like, you don't just do one tarot reading and never do another one ever again.
Mm.
Someone says, here's something interesting. Okay. I developed a new appreciation, says, oh, Jorge. This is another Golden Dawn adept from the wonderful sister tradition to ours in LA in the 90s. A new appreciation for Christianity after the overwhelming Muslim influence in Turkey and the sadness I felt after seeing so many Greco-Roman ruins. I assume you mean seeing so many Greco-Roman things ruined, or ruins ruined. I'm going to assume that that's what you mean. And I'm not aware too much of the Muslim influence in Turkey or how the politics and geopolitics. I actually don't know much about that. I'm embarrassed to say. I've had some really good friends from Turkey, musicians especially I've worked with, amazing people. I've always wanted to go to the Bazaar, which is another Tea Party song you should all check out. If you do one thing before bed, it's listen to the Bazaar by the Tea Party. Go Canada. You won't regret it. The whole album cover is covered with Key of Solomon symbolism. Right. So I don't know what you're referring to, Jorge, but I also, one of the last people I was in love with in life was Kurdish. So I am aware of some of the things that happened there, because I'm pretty sure they had a wee little tiny genocide, of the Kurds in Turkey, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not. I really hope I'm not mistaken. You don't want to falsely accuse people of genocide these days.
Well, we can talk about the Armenians as well, and the Christian Armenians. So it's not
it's been open season on Christians for a long time now. Almost 300 churches in Canada burned in the last 3 years. Is it Nigeria? There's a genocide of Christians going on. Yeah,
absolutely.
Christians is a bad time to be a Christian, but at the same time, my professors said in seminary back in 2000 to 2005, They said Christianity, unfortunately, it's a post-Christian world. You got to be aware of this going into ministry as professional priests and pastors. We are in a post-Christian, perhaps post-religious world. I would no longer say we're in a post-religious world, though. That was the prediction, but holy moly, things have the religion dial's been turned up to 11, eh? Like it's off. It's nuts. It's nuts. It's almost too much for me. You know, I'm super religious, but some days I'm just like, can we just chill? Just chill. Just bring it down to a 3. You know, if your amp doesn't need to be at 11. Keep it down.
Yes, yes, Shia LaBeouf. Yes, Christ is Lord. I said it already. Please, okay, that's enough. You've made your point.
Yeah. Where do we go from here? Yeah, I can't see your face without having Tea Party songs stuck in my head, of course, because like you're the only other person I know who kind of knows the man, and he's a presence, eh? He's a presence, like kind of fills up. He fills up the room. Then the whole band. Some bands, and the Tea Party is one of these bands. On stage, you just think they're regular guys, but that's because they're all super tall. And then you see when you walk up to them, you're like, oh, I'm a midget. I'm tiny. They're all 6'3", 6'2", 6'4", and it's always funny when you think, oh, they're just regular people, and then you walk up and you're like, Jesus Christ, does God not love me? Thank you for being my first congregant in my soon to be opened Church of Jesus Christ Swordmouth. And a Bible verse. Yeah, we always like Bible verses. People love Shia LaBeouf as well. He is an interesting guy. I actually got to meet him. I went to pay rent one day just down here in Gastown, and they were filming, and I ran to my landlord's office building to go up and pay the rent. And they were filming, so I had to like get in between stuff to get to the door, and then I got through some crew, walked up to buzz the door, and there was 2 dudes standing in front of the door, and they were talking facing the door, and they turned around to let me by, and it was Robert Redford and Shia LaBeouf, and I just sort of froze. Like I was just frozen. Like they had to shake me out of it and be like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah." It's just you just don't expect it, and yeah. Robert Redford's very short, but yeah, so I did get to run into those 2. That's funny. That's the nice thing about living in Vancouver. You get to have these random. You're just living your normal humdrum life, and then all of a sudden, like it's some people don't like me talking about that stuff, but it's a part of life here, and it's worth mentioning because it's funny and odd. We want to talk before you go about the Black Lodge. Boom, boom, boom. I can't do the Twin Peaks theme, but I can show you my keychain.
Oh, that's great.
I'll send you one. You want one? Let me Amazon you one. Let me Amazon you one, brother. Yeah, I'm gonna Amazon you one. Yeah, you gotta have one. We'll be brothers.
Awesome.
We'll be keychain brothers in the Great Northern Lodge.
Yeah, and then I can go out and order a long black somewhere and sip on it and think of season 1, and it'd be an immersive experience.
I'm actually like finally ready for a rewatch because I watched the 3rd season. I really liked it. I know there's mixed opinions on it, but I really liked it. I certainly liked it more than the 2nd season, which David Lynch wasn't really involved in. Like the 2nd season got a little, you know what, just a bit too soapy, campy, and goofy. Still amazing ending, powerful show, but I'm finally ready to actually watch all 3 back to back. Like, well, not back to back, but you know what I mean. So well, I'm glad. I'm glad to go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm ready to rewatch them as well, all 3 seasons.
Nice.
And the reason why is because Diana Pasulka, who is quite prominent, as you would know, following things that have happened over the last few months, she's quite prominent with the UFO world and drawing the connections between ancient accounts of angels and UFOs, and how there's like a religious aspect to the UFO phenomenon or UAP phenomenon, and she's been at crash sites and she's been pretty involved in that whole world of the government involvement in studying UAP. She tweeted recently that she just watched Twin Peaks, and it was the most accurate representation of the phenomenon that she had ever seen. So that's something to consider as well when you
How
rewatch.
how do you connect UAPs to Twin Peaks? Excuse me.
Well, I mean, there's the whole. Oh, there's going to be spoilers here. There's the whole sub.
Yeah, no, go. It's fine.
Do we go there or?
Yeah. Let's do
Okay.
it. It's been out for ages. If people haven't watched it, then they're not fans. And if they haven't watched it and they're going to watch it, by the time they get to this point, they will have forgotten this because there's so much other insanity on the way.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like memorizing Fire Walk with Me and forget all about what you're about to say. So yeah, tell me, remind me.
Well, there's some homages to Jack Parsons and the Babylon working in season 3. I think that's the one with the nuclear explosion and how that released a dark entity into the world. It's kind of that whole paranoia that the Collins elite have about how Jack Parsons released dark extra-dimensional intelligences into the world or something like that. So that would be just one connection, I suppose. But it does tend to be more occult and esoteric than anything like space aliens. But the more you look into the whole UFO, UAP issue, the more esoteric it becomes, actually. It sort of morphs into something that very closely resembles Western esoteric magic, or actually, it's not just a Western thing. It's more shamanic even. Peter Lavender would say that it's really contact has been going on since shamanistic times, and the journey of the spirit into the stars to communicate with things, and that the modern UAP phenomenon is just a continuation of that, and sometimes it can kind of materialize in our world. So I guess that would be. I mean, that's pretty consistent with what's in Twin Peaks, I think.
Yeah, the as soon as you go into allow the extra dimensional element to be part of the conversation, then you have spirits back in the game, right? You have religious deities back in the game, and it becomes a whole other thing. What was your live stream with Matt Brown like, and how was it hanging out with these whistleblowers as just some humble Australian adept of the Western mystery tradition?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's because of the time difference, I only sort of came on in my morning, so I missed Dylan Borland, but yeah, it was amazing hanging out with Matthew Brown, and yeah, we had fun together. He's interested in some of this stuff too. You know, his name on X is Son of Abramelin. So we did a tarot spread about Three Eye Atlas, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think we both enjoyed ourselves, and I was very honored to be on his first ever live stream, because he's been yeah.
So
he's been great.
Tell me about you and Matt Brown did a tarot reading on Three Eye Atlas. I mean, give us the goods. What did you get? What happened?
Well, so the question that Matt formulated was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of, are the observatories that are watching Three Eye Atlas giving us the whole truth, or something along those lines? And basically we had, it was a real doozy of a tarot spread, actually. It was a Celtic cross spread. We got the Tower upside down, and we got death, and we got the Three of Swords is the final outcome. So it was a real doozy. But the overall thrust of the spread seemed to be that there was some deception going on there, and maybe people building towards a point where they wanted to share more information, but that wouldn't necessarily happen in the end, and people might be disappointed by the information that comes out or the lack thereof. Really, and that's kind of vague, but that's sort of where we landed, I think.
Where you landed?
No pun intended.
Was it a big mountain with a flat top?
Yeah.
Well, people can go check out the live stream to see more of that. Check it out, folks. We do need to talk, I think, more about the Black Lodge, but the Twin Peaks and Matt Brown stuff leads into that really well. People really liked and responded to your Black Lodge thing. I wonder, so how much, for what reason that is. Do you see the warring political parties that we have? I mean, in the States, it's really simple. There's two parties. Canada, there was three, but the leader of the far left party, which people like me always voted for, perhaps I should have paid more attention because they did some bad things that led to their demise. They lost party status in our last election. So now we only really have two parties, with these two smaller parties that can team up with one of the parties to give them a majority. It's chaos. Do you see them as both working for the Black Lodge when you have these warring political parties?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be careful how I phrase this here, because I mean, people can have a certain political ideology for whatever reason, and not everybody who belongs to a particular political ideology is necessarily to blame or has the same intentions as the people that are in control of that. Some of them are being manipulated. Other people are just just there for different reasons, or maybe the nature of that ideology has changed over the decades and they just haven't let it go because it means something different for them. But I do think that there's a political polarization happening, and I do think that if you're a part of a mob that's calling for people to be unalived, it's like, screw you, just universally. But yeah, there is definitely a polar, and that shouldn't be a partisan take to have either. We should all just agree, and it's a problem on both sides, because Trump did it on X recently about it, presumably about the press or whatever. But there does seem to be a polarization happening, and you have to support one side or the other. And I mean, if we're talking about a failure to see beyond dualistic thinking, I mean, falling into either one of those poles would be an abysmal failure of that test, really, I think. And I think that there could be a spiritual dimension behind that. I mean, there are spiritual forces at work in our world. That's something that I've become very aware of in the last year. It's not just when we step into a ritual and we interact with these things, it's not just a LARP. Like, there's something there, and some of them are really nasty. And you just see certain things, and you think, that seems to have the signature of something dark and sinister behind it, like something that wants to destroy humanity at a spiritual level. Like we were just talking about Yuval Harari before. That would be a perfect example of that.
Yeah, the shift that I've seen in my lifetime is when I was younger, in the 80s, in the 90s, people would say things politically, but even our crazy relatives who were like, evangelical Christians in Missouri, paddling the shit out of their kids, one of whom my cousin recently died a few years ago. because of the abuse, and that's all he could talk about. He was broken by it. You know, we didn't even disown those family members back then for like calling up other relatives in our family who were gay and be like, you're going to hell. They would call them up just to say that, you know. And now those family members aren't even evangelical fundamentalists anymore. Now they're hippies living over on Vancouver Island, right, doing pottery and being like, yeah, I was wrong. It's like, tell that to your dead kid, you know. But no, she has no regret. So what I've seen change, because there was tolerance back then. Like, okay, we have different political, because the argument for having two political sides is counterbalances, right? Checks and measures. That's the argument for it. One side gets too crazy, we go the other side. It balances out. Then that side gets too crazy, too much power. That's the rationale for it. And I think it does actually kind of work. It works better than if we just had one party, obviously.
Definitely.
But the shift I've seen is not a horizontal shift, it's a vertical shift. It's not just about, you know, you voting for who you think will benefit us and I vote for who I think will benefit us, and with the majority wins for now. Right? Now it's, if you disagree with me, you must die. That's crazy. That's a dark place we've come to. Right? And that's a vertical shift, leaving the center of balance and shifting downward into, we must destroy what is sacred, which is human life. We must destroy the human life that disagrees with what I want to be true. And that's where I see that's where I see the work of Thaumiel, if you like, of two contending forces, ununited, that cannot be that are not being balanced. Those so I obviously we do have to be somewhat careful in what we say, but you're on my channel and I was shadow banned years ago, so you can say whatever you want, honestly, but you have to watch out for yourself, because we're all being watched. Big Brother's got us in his sights.
Yeah. And, you know, if you offend the wrong person, you might just end up, you know, taking a bullet to the neck. So, you know, it is risky, unfortunately, just to express your opinion these days. So, yeah, I mean, I think the more I think about it, the more I think that while there certainly does seem to be evil at work in this whole kind of like civil unrest that we are in, and like a spiritual evil, I think we need to, well, first of all, we need to show restraint in the way, you know, we might have to defend ourselves at some point, but it's important to not get dragged down into the mentality of what I would call the Black Lodge, of just wanting to destroy your enemy. We need to recognize the humanity in people and be restrained, and just remember that we're trying to minimize harm for everybody, and we're trying to create something stable again, and we need to just treat people like human beings, even if we virulently disagree with them, and maybe even make some critiques of their worldview that are quite withering along the way. But I think it's more so a spiritual war than a civil war against other people that is emerging or in progress. And I think at everyone's core, they have a soul or spirit or whatever you want to call that. And for some people, it's buried very deep beneath a lot of other crap. But what we're really up against is the demonic nature in all people that we have in ourselves as well. We need to constantly keep in check in ourselves. And so that's the thing that's the real enemy, and it's not other people. And that darkness and that malevolence can manifest in a lot of different forms. It's not just one religion, or it's not just one political ideology. And so I guess that's kind of what I was trying to get at in my Black Lodge video, and it's kind of what I was trying to get at in my spiritual warfare video as well. It's like, or spiritual protection. It's like, okay, we're in a spiritual war. What does that mean? Well, it's, it's like St. Paul says, our enemy is principalities and powers. It's not humanity. It's not the other half of humanity. It's not other people, ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not other people. Like, I'm really scared by the talk that goes around of describing so-called NPCs as humans without souls. And I know Steiner might have implied this was the case, but I really think that's dangerous. I think we played with that before the 20th century a bit too much, and it helped feed into the Holocaust, concentration camps, but not just that, the Gulag and my grandfather was in a Japanese concentration camp. It wasn't just the Germans who were doing that shit. Fucking, this was the end result of saying, that some people, some human souls and beings don't have souls or are subhuman. Like all the blacks and Irish were considered subhuman in the dictionary until very recently. And now we've returned to the Irish being inferior. That's what's happening in Ireland right now. I have a lot of friends and family over there, and they're being told that they are colonizers on land that was originally owned by black people. They're telling this in school books. I've seen the school books about how black people built Stonehenge and originally were the inhabitants, and then the white Irish and Anglo-Saxons came and killed. It's crazy. And I think that we can make a really simple shift, because the reason people are so attracted to that corrupt theology is because it does seem like some people are NPCs. It does. It really does. If you don't think so, you haven't been on a bus in a while, right? So I would encourage my kind viewers to consider that maybe it's just that they have a soul. It's just not awoken yet to the higher life, right? It's sleeping. Like you said, deep down, it's buried. And that's okay, right? That doesn't mean we put them in gulags. That's my thoughts on that. We got another super chat. Thank you very much, Ganicus, for the support. It means the world to me. What are you both talking about now? Why doing this work and spreading the light is needed now more than ever. Thank you for, thank you for highlighting that. Thank you. That's exactly it. You said something else that I wanted to address. Why we seek the middle pill. You say a lot of good things. You did say the Hermetic principle of polarization. That's not in the Hermetica. That's in the Kabbalion. So technically, it's a new thought principle. But, it's in the Kabbalion. So people think of it as Hermetic. There's nothing like that in the Hermetica. But polarization, I mean, we all do experience that pendulum swing. And the Kabbalah deals a lot with polarization in theory and practice. So spirit versus matter, as you say. Yeah. Ephesians 6:12. The NPC discourse is dehumanizing and immoral. Yes, it is. It's one thing to make jokes about, daily life. That's okay. But yeah, the idea that, that there's a certain group of humans, or that people who act a certain way are less than us, is just dangerous. Even if you're not going to hurt them because they're NPCs, it hurts you. It hurts you because diminishing the dignity of any human soul diminishes your own dignity. And this is one of the greatest challenges I think we face in human life is, not just loving our neighbors, loving our enemies. Very hard to not see people who will call for our death and dox us and invade our homes. Very hard to see them as people that deserve dignity or life. Very hard.
But the path of spiritual perfection is hard. That's the whole point. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So,
Apparently Matt is here. Is Matt Brown here? No. That would be crazy. Matt Brown, if you're here.
He could be.
Hello. Thank you for your disclosure, sir. If that is you, come on and talk with us sometime. You're always welcome. And Occultology. Hey, good to see you, brother. Good to see you, channel member. How are you going to put all of them in a camp? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. How would you get a camp big enough for all the? Well, maybe Elon can send them to Mars. I don't know. It's so silly. Yeah. Well, they wouldn't put them in a camp. With a modern camp, we don't need concentration camps anymore. We have digital ghettos, and also we have the ability to create viruses that kill only certain people and stuff. So the future is terrifying and wonderful, isn't it? Just a delight. We got the Black Lodge, we got the White Lodge, we got UAPs, aliens, remote viewing, DMT, and TikTok. We got it all. We got it all. The world's at our fingertips. Yeah. Invisible Frontiers. I don't know who you are, but thank you for the comment. And thank you for enjoying the conversation. That's Matt. That is Matt. I had a feeling. Well, Matt Brown, good day, sir. Hello. Welcome. Hello from Vancouver, Canada. Love to have you on the podcast. Come on with both of us sometime, or we can do a three-way, little alien three-way. I joke, but I trust me, I am a serious Canadian. I'm not one of the flappy head South Park ones. Well, I mean, that would be kind of cool if my head could detach. Then that would take remote viewing to a whole other level if I could just like send it off to the Pentagon and be like, fly away, attach it to a drone. Yeah. Well, we got like 10 minutes left, so get your super chats and questions in, people, if you have any burning questions for us that you want us to address. Like, we got 10, 15 more minutes left. Yeah, what, go for it.
Oh,
Sounded
well,
like
I was just going to say, since Matt is here, a big part of my journey over the last few months has been exploring UAP and how that feeds into the occult. And it's been a really interesting rabbit hole. And I'd love to talk more about that with you. And but it's not a conversation that can happen in 15 minutes. So,
well, we could go longer if you want. I mean, it depends how much time you have. I was going to ask you a question about Matt Brown, but now I feel weird asking it since he's here. I was going to ask you if you think maybe he has practiced in any Enochian magic, but pretty weird to say that knowing the guy's watching. So it is what it is. You don't have to answer that because it's probably not appropriate to.
Well, I'll leave Matt to speak for himself on that sort of stuff.
We'll let him speak for himself. It is something I was curious about. Yeah. And hopefully, Matt, you'll come on sometime because it's fucking fascinating what is going on in the world and what you're a part of. It's it's had us in great conversation for the last many months. And everyone's happy to have you here. We're all honored to a brave soul like you has spoken out about these things and somehow connected it to Enochian magic and the revelations of John Dee and Sir Edward Kelly. I hope you know we have conferences, Matt Brown. We're doing one in Austin, Texas next December. Go to arcaneresearchsociety.com for more information. Maybe you want to do a presentation. I could fit you in. That would be wild. Plus it's in Austin, Texas, so we don't even need to hire like security for people, because everyone's fucking armed. Everyone's strapped. Security becomes an issue the bigger events get. And I was asking, like, what's the policy at this venue? And they're like, oh yeah, it's Austin, people can conceal carry wherever they want. Like, oh, guess I don't have to hire security. Cool. Jorge Quinones, what you saying, brother? One time invoking Mikhail, some of the other people in the apartment saw a UAP. Yeah, it's crazy, the crossover between magical practice and UAP spotting and observation. That's something Daniel Rekshan has been talking about for ages and practicing for ages with his Enochian magic. And I'm sure Matt probably knows who Daniel Rekshan is. And that's why he I brought him into the conferences right away, because I was like, this guy's here in British Columbia and he really knows his stuff, Danny Rekshan. When he knows all the stuff that I would want to know if I was into UAP stuff. So it's great to be able to just ask him those questions and have him really give a detailed, in-depth answer with the mind of an academic researcher and the skills of one. So that's really cool. Yeah, I hope we can get you out of Australia, man, and to Europe. Like, I don't know if it's easier to get to North America or to get to Europe, but I'd love to bring you to John D. and Kelly's Tower in Prague with us 2027. So, I'll save up to help bring you there if you will maybe meet me halfway. You know what I mean? We can maybe do it. We could swing it. It would be fun. Have you with Dan Rection and all these other people.
It's definitely something that I'd like to do. I'd love to do if it's within the realm of possibilities. How to make that happen is something for me to have a think about.
Well, we'd probably be able to. Australia is a long ways. I know the flights there are crazy, but yeah, it could be doable. It could be doable. I think we could make it happen. Okay, this is the last question we're going to do, unless someone gets it in right away. Gannicus, again, on a positive note, we are living in a time now where we have access to the information that kings would have killed for in prior times. Very true. We can communicate across the world in real time, as you're demonstrating right now with your beautiful gift of a super chat. The current continues and always will. Amen. Hallelujah. May we all be blessed with the divine spirit of life and light. We'll just do a few more of these. We'll do the hearts. I like the emojis. Emojis are good. I dig it. My mom said personages stood above my body when I saw my spirit guide. I believe it. Organic section point, and a reminder to always practice gratitude. Yeah, Matt Brown. Yeah, practice gratitude is the number one prayer of the Hermetic tradition. Is the prayer of thanksgiving. Yeah, it's the prayer of thanksgiving. Here's one of the translations from an alternate textual tradition than the main Coptic or Greek one, I believe. Shall we hear it? The prayer of thanksgiving. Let's do it. We can keep talking after it. I don't have anywhere I have to be. So this is it. This is how they would celebrate. And then they'd have a little Eucharist, for lack of a better word. We render you thanks, most high and potent God, for it is only by your grace that we have come to the light of your knowledge. So this is in 3rd century Alexandria, the original Hermetist community of Hermetic people. Holy and reverend is your name, the one name by which God alone is to be praised according to the religion of our fathers. We do indeed thank you, since you deign to give all beings your paternal care, your religion, and your love. And even sweeter, upon us you have bestowed these powers: perception, reason, and intelligence. Perception that we may recognize you, reason that we may follow up our intuition, and knowledge that in knowing you we may find joy. Having been saved by your divine power, we rejoice because you have shown yourself to us in your totality. We rejoice because while we are still in these bodies, you deign to consecrate us for eternity. This is the only way human beings have of giving thanks, to acknowledge your majesty. We have known you and the supreme light by conscious intelligence alone. We understand you, O true life of life, O fertile womb of all that has come into being, O eternal steadfastness. We have known you in your conception of the whole of abundant nature. In every prayer through which we reverence the good of all good, we plead only for this, that you may wish us to continue to serve you in the love of your knowledge, and that we may never be separated from this kind of life. Desirous of these things, we turn to a repast that is pure and undefiled by the flesh of animals. So that's when they would have their bread and wine or whatever symbolic meal to celebrate life and light. So that's their main prayer of the Hermetists. And it's beautiful. And you really can hear some of the language. Doesn't it make you think, oh, our traditions in OTO, AA, GD and stuff, they're actually a lot more Hermetic than people might have thought.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that language is always used, that vibe. It's constant throughout all the different things. There's always that kind of life of light, oh God of God, give us joy, let us rejoice, all this stuff. This is a pagan prayer. This is a pagan prayer, but by pagans who had no problem with Jesus being a savior. So in a way, it might ruffle some feathers, but who cares? The early Hermetists were kind of an interfaith religion, if that makes sense. They had the Egyptian gods. All the gods were real. All the daimones and spirits of the universe were all real, but all are parts of God, of the one monad, and they're just slightly different. And I did the audiobook for the new translation of the Hermetica 1. Get it on Audible. It's one of my proudest accomplishments, a professional audiobook on Audible of the new translation by Dr. M. David Litwa. I'm very proud of it. You can download it for free on Audible by signing up for an account. So check it out. And I did it as a gift to him, as a thanks to him for doing the new translation. I just said, let me do this. I bought a fancy ass mic, and not a simple podcast. I bought a Neumann KMS 105, and that's what you'll hear. And did a real professional job, and it was a great joy. He said he's hired many audiobook narrators in his career, and none of them came close to how good I did. So take that for what it's worth. That was definitely one of the happiest emails I've ever gotten in my life. So please enjoy it, people. Thank you. And another super chat. Thank you guys, everyone, for supporting me and Frater Eleftheria so much. Amen. Thank you. God bless. Seriously, to all the pagans, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Vedanta, yogis, Tao Te Ching, shamans. We're all human beings. And I think that's why esotericism has become so big, because people want something that is extraterritorial, and rejected knowledge fundamentally is extraterritorial. It's already been cast out of the mainstream. So, you're in the liminal space the second you step into it, and therefore you're automatically in the sacred space, right? As soon as you enter it, and that's powerful. Yeah, Dr. Litwa rocks. He does rock. He's so cool. Check out Dr. Litwa. Justin Sledge was talking about him on his video today on the Hermetic Demiurge on Esoterica channel. And Dr. Litwa just got back from taking people to Greece, or to Rome, to Egypt. They all blend together, don't they? They're all so similar. Thank you very much. Frater, anything we should talk about before we let you go? I don't have an end point. And as my my podcast has proven, I'm capable of going over 6 hours. I have a 6-hour episode with someone. It's worth watching. I
mean, I'll have to look it up sometime. But
if you ever get divorced, watch my 6-hour podcast with Lenny. Lenny's great. He's worth watching.
But have to. I'm sure there'll be a way of portioning it out or something. But no natural point where I'd like to stop.
After like 3 hours, we broke out the scotch, and then I started talking about celiac disease for probably like 20-30 minutes. It goes into everything. But he's an expert on Freemasonry, so he spent a whole time talking about the first Freemasonic lodge in Scotland in the late 1400s, which blows most people's mind to hear that. And I was like, I want to hear more about that. And I challenged him on that, because I've heard a lot of people say bullshit on that. And he went into the details. He also went so far as to be like, I can go down the street and take a picture of it if you want. It's still there, basically. So yeah, Freemasonry was around before Dr. John Dee.
Yeah, and that's kind of edging towards the very earliest accepted time period when Freemasonry came about, isn't it? Unless you think that they were also
most people think of Freemasonry as starting more in the late 17th century, 18th century, really taking off. But that's Grand Lodge of England stuff. It was alive and well and started out in Scotland. And that's something I think most people do know. They just don't realize how early Lodge Zero was. There was a Lodge Zero. So it's crazy to think that it was already around in the time of King Henry VIII, right? That's wild. But, those crazy Scots up there in the Highlands, they're up to all kinds of shit. Freemasonry was one of them. Well, yeah, anything you want to talk about before? I mean, we've been going almost 3 hours now.
Well, yeah, nothing that I'd like to talk about that's not going to open a can of worms. And
yeah, I know, right? Not that would
know,
take us
yeah.
beyond the point at which we have to go pee again. So, like, let's just do a round 2 really soon. Let's just we'll talk more really soon.
Yeah.
Sound good? Cool.
Yeah.
And
sounds
people,
good.
if you want us to come back sooner rather than later, just, you know, spam the comment section under this video. Matt Brown, get in touch. It would be very cool to have a little group. We can do several people on my channel, of course. I'm up for anything. Just chilling out here in Canada, in beautiful British Columbia, watching the price of our dollar continue to sink. The end times are near. The price of lettuce is too high. Oh, curses. Yeah. I'm glad you appreciate my sense of humor, people. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Frater Eleftheria, for being not only here today, but part of my Upstart conference and helping it get legs. Because now, boy, does it have legs. It is off to the races with Enokia Con and the Arcane Reach Society. And as I said to all you presenters, like, help me out now. Help me start this thing. You know, I will definitely, you know, it's a society. It's not a rando. It's not a rando group. So, you know, I'm going to keep building it with the people who invested their time and energy in the beginning. That's the idea, to build up an actual community that practices hospitality to the world. It isn't an insular and shut off community like most academic societies that do all these big conferences. And we don't even have the option of paying to watch them. You know, sometimes they put their stuff out online for free, but University of Amsterdam does a summer school of Hermetic studies thing coming up, and like the early bird price for that is €850. You know, like, so yeah. Please support our work. Go to enokiacon.com, subscribe, register, watch the courses. The money goes to these presenters. Thank you very much. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's been so much fun. I'd love to do it all night, but you probably need to have lunch.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to
probably a good idea.
This was fasting day, but
it's a fasting day. Fasting.
Oh no,
day.
If it was, then that would be a reason not to have lunch. But not that I really do that, but I should, because the Bible says that you should. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's Saturday for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saturday morning. What a Saturday morning.
What a way to start your weekend. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Talking to this crazy Canuck up here in the Great White North. I love it. I love it. I look forward to meeting you in person, man, but it's just been great getting to know you online.
Yeah,
keep up with the great videos. You know, sometimes I don't watch your new video because it's like, oh, should I get into that? Because I know once I get into it, I'm going to watch another video. And next thing I know, it's like 2 hours gone by. And I'm like, where did the time go? Because you just sort of, it's your voice, your presentation just lulls me. And I'm just like, I love it. I love it. But it's hypnotic. Do you have a background as a hypnotist?
No, I don't.
Do you do that NLP stuff where you trick people into listening to you with your finger or your eye?
No, I don't. But I do have a very slow-paced voice, so that's probably what causes the hypnotic effect. But that's just naturally how I talk. So
it's just a gift from God, from the Holy Spirit. All right.
Well,
depends
on who you ask, but yeah.
Sure. Oh my God. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for having me on, Frater, and it's been really great. I always enjoy coming on your podcast and having a chat. So yeah.
Yeah, technically you've been on it before in the fun 4-way we had with PD Newman and Danny Rekshan. Say that 3 times fast. That was fun. It's one of my most popular videos, and we really covered the gamut of stuff. Excuse me. So go check that out, people. The other video on my YouTube with or podcast on Apple, Spotify, you name it. Oh, please give me reviews and 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcast. That would mean the world to me. Thank you. I don't mind the nasty reviews I get. I don't mind that at all, but I should also remind people to give me some ones that are, you know, bit kinder. So if you do me that honor, my audience, thank you very much. Friends, Romans, countrymen, see you on the flippity flop. Been a great night. This has been awesome. And so much news coming your way. Crazy. It's going to be a crazy few weeks, and end of the year. From now to the end of the year, it's just going to be crazy. And yeah, and that's not even talking about what's going on in the world outside our door. So peace and love, everybody. Light in extension. Fare thee well, and enjoy these words from the great and mighty Irishman colonizer W.B. Yeats.
Be you still. Be you still, trembling heart. Remember the wisdom out of the old days. Him who trembles before the flame and the flood, and the winds that blow through the starry ways. Let the starry winds and the flame and the flood cover over and hide, for he has no part with the lonely, majestical multitude.